Call this meeting of the Williamsburg-James City County School Board to order for the last time. Can I get a motion for certification of closed session?
Mr. Chair, I certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, the Williamsburg-James City County School Board, while in closed session, discuss only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements as stated in Virginia law, and that only such public matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
Thank you, Mrs. Owenby. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Hummel. Any discussion? Ms. Aller?
Ms. Owenby.
Aye.
Mrs. Young.
Aye.
Dr. Beers.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. Dowell.
Aye.
Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye, thank you. 3.01, Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Miani and Mr. Townsend, could you come here and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Notice.
Yep. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Miani. Mr. Townsend? Dr. Miani is the principal at Lafayette High School, and Mr. Townsend at Jamestown. So thank you for being drafted this evening. 3.02, the roll. Ms. Aller?
Dr. Beers.
Here.
Ms. Cook.
Here.
Mr. Dowell.
Here.
Ms. Hummel.
Here.
Ms. Owenby.
Here.
Mrs. Young. Here. Mr. Kelly.
Here, thank you. Can I motion for approval of the agenda, please?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Hummel. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Any discussion? Ms. Aller?
Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Ms. Owenby.
Aye.
Mrs. Young.
Aye.
Dr. Beers.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. Dowell.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye, thank you. Ms. Cook, the motion carries. Announcements and superintendent's report. Dr. Herron?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My report this evening begins with highlighting our partnership with the Rotary Club of James City County. The Rotary Club continued its 17-year tradition of donating printed dictionaries to every third grader in WJCC schools. Printed dictionaries are a powerful tool for literacy. They help students learn alphabetical order and how to locate a word. Also, when students leaf through the pages of a dictionary to find a specific word, they see other new and interesting words they might not know, expanding their vocabulary. In the past, the Rotary Club has conducted a small workshop with the third graders on how to use their dictionaries to help with reading. This year, they were not able to visit classrooms. However, Mr. Hallman, who coordinates the distribution, felt continuing their tradition of donating dictionaries was important. As of today, the Rotary Club has donated over 14,000 dictionaries to WJCC's third graders over the last 17 years. Partnering with families is essential for student success. Spanish pop-up academies are offered from November through March through face-to-face and virtual sessions. These learning sessions, offered entirely in Spanish, help bridge the gap for families who may otherwise find it challenging to be involved and support their child's education. Some topics include Parent View, Student View, Canvas, WJCC School's website, and the Code of Conduct. Also, this past month, elementary school families participated in parent conferences. This year, we were able to assist 125 Spanish-speaking families over 6 days with translation services. Mr. Rivas, our family liaison community outreach coordinator, enabled these families to take part in conferences and be a partner in their child's education. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Herron. Ms. Owenby?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Young and I met with the Student Advisory Committee, and I'll share my thoughts, and Ms. Young might have additional information to share. It's always a joy to meet with the students. It was the first time since 2020 we got to meet face-to-face with our Student Advisory Committee. We have representatives 9th through 12th grade from all of our 3 high schools. So we did an icebreaker, which was great. We had an opportunity to get to know the students, and it was clear from my group, as well as I'm sure the other 3 groups, definitely they're the high flyers, the students who are selected and choose to participate in our Student Advisory Committee. So we asked the students, why did you choose to participate in the Student Advisory Committee? And the collective thoughts were they wanted to be leaders, they wanted to learn from their peers and other high schools here in the division, and they wanted to share their perspective and make a difference. One of the things that we asked students was just to kind of share with us what it was like coming back in person, what were some struggles or things that were different this year, and echoed more than one time was the change in our block scheduling from semester-based to year-long. And it was clear that our high flyers, those that are taking the AP level classes, the more rigorous classes, were feeling overwhelmed with the amount of homework, because the amount of homework has not changed, even though students are now responsible for 8 classes simultaneously instead of 4. So they wanted administration to hear that maybe we needed to look again at homework, because they're juggling 8 classes now simultaneously instead of 4. And Ms. Young, I might have left something out.
I was at that meeting also. One of the things that I heard also at the beginning during the icebreakers, they were there also because they wanted to have a voice. Excuse me. But some of the future topics that we were also asked for to talk about things that they would like to discuss in the future. They wanted to talk about pep rallies, dances and activities, which have not gone back to normal completely, or if at all. And of course, the block schedule was discussed. There was also a mention of a 4-day school week. I would like that for a lot of reasons for myself. Start school later. We've talked about our high schoolers starting school later. And also, many of the students that were taking AP thought it would be nice to have a free period to do homework. And even was mentioned that they would like no homework. So I don't know how much that's going to happen, but it's fun to be with those students because they're always excited and bubbly, and you know, they're just on the verge of growing up, so it's lots of fun. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
And then, Mr. Chair, if I could just add back to Ms. Young's point about starting later. Everyone agreed, every student around the table agreed that we should start, high school should start later, but then when we asked each student to give their own thoughts about operationalizing that, only one student still thought that it could work. But each of the own students, when we asked them about operationalizing that, were like, oh, well, this would be a problem. They kind of came back to the collective, these are the barriers to make it difficult, which I thought was interesting.
Any other announcements? Announcements? Okay, 5.01, students and/or staff recognition. Mr. Dow?
Yes, sir. So, good evening, everyone. And we're excited tonight to recognize the division's finance team for an outstanding accomplishment. I'd ask our CFO, Renee Ewing, to please join us at the front of the dais. VA Corp, the leading provider of coverage and risk management services to school divisions, presented WJCC Schools the Excellence in Risk Management Award at VSBA's 2021 Annual Convention. The Property Casualty More Than 10,000 Students distinction recognizes school divisions that excel in risk management and focus on strong safety, injury prevention, and property protection practices. This award positions WJCC Schools as a leading division in the Commonwealth for best practices in risk management. Congratulations to Ms. Ewing and her team for their leadership and commendable achievements. Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask you to stay where you are, and if I can ask Ms. Ownby to join you at the front of the dais. It is not on the agenda. I'm taking a liberty here. We just wanted to recognize both of you for your commendable and honorable service to our community and to our schools and our children over the last decade and more between the two of you and your collective service and years. I've had the opportunity personally to serve with you for 2 years, and I've learned a great deal of what it is to be steadfast and staunch in the trenches, and you both have served as chair during a pandemic, no less, and you've shown incredible grace and fortitude in that time, and I just want to say thank you to the both of you, and I think Ms. Aller is going to join me at the front, and we have some gifts for you. know that my board colleagues will want to share their own words of gratitude, and we'll give them an opportunity to do that at board member comments, if we can wait till then. Mr. Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Dowell. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure. 6.01, public comment. Mr. Dowell again.
Yes, sir. So, it's at this point in our meeting where citizens are invited to address the board. Those citizens desiring to speak have submitted speaker cards to the clerk prior to the start of tonight's meeting. These speakers are asked to come to the podium when their names are called, state their names for the record, and direct their comments to the chair of the board. It is the board's interest that all comments are heard and respected. Hence, citizens are asked to refrain from applauding or any other outbursts of any type during the presentations. Personnel matters are not considered in public meetings, therefore the board requests that all speakers refrain from making reference to specific individuals in any form or fashion. Though the board does not respond to your comments are heard and appreciated. Each speaker is allocated 1 minute and 30 seconds to make their presentation, and the board asks that you respect this time limitation. Also, please be reminded that no time may be yielded to another speaker. Our first speaker of the evening is Ms. Gayla Baumgart.
Gayla Baumgart. I want to thank the board members who spoke up about the volunteers. These overly cautious to a fault COVID restrictions are an illegitimate hardship for teachers and families. Your own health team has said that it's safe to do a host of things that are still restricted. Why are we still having so many restrictions? Who is making these decisions, and what data justifies these restrictions? From what I've been told, in-school transmission is not happening. How many cases of in-school transmission has there been this school year? Other districts have and share this information. Virginia Beach is piloting having no quarantine in high school as they are not having in-school transmission. Our way out is the same. Take away a mitigation layer and then measure in-school transmission. For field trips, my principal said, we're just not doing field trips. When I asked, is it because of COVID, he would not say yes. He would only say, we haven't been given the go-ahead for that. And so I asked him, the go-ahead by who? And he wouldn't tell me. Same for why I'm not allowed in my school, and our 5th grade band concert is canceled because of COVID. Who decided that a 5th grade band concert is unsafe, and based on what data? And where is the creativity? Let's have it outside. I'm so tired of me and my kids being treated like a contagion. We got our shots, but still it's no, no, no. Also, the bands couldn't participate in the parade due to non-fact-based safety worries. They were missed. There are many other overboard restrictions and unnecessary restrictions. I brought a partial list. It's far past time to ease these unnecessary restrictions in the name of safety.
Thank you, Ms. Baumgartner.
Ms. Jill Piles.
Hi, I have a student at Lafayette High. I haven't met the principal, Ms. Aller. Thank you for letting me email, letting me talk, let me call. We're grateful for the staff and teachers, and that school's been in person since August. Thankful for after-school sports. I'm not sure if there's after-school clubs. Like to see that. Thankful for the cafeteria workers, and my son eats lunches. I'm sure some are good and some are bad. Thankful for the cafeteria workers and their hard work and to feed everyone, and the bus drivers. And I'm glad for the email sent out to clarify that in-school masks are optional for exercise. In-school masks are optional for exercise, and that we should talk to our principals about it. I appreciate that. In September, my child said it was hard to breathe, so it's hard to breathe. Please talk to Governor Northam about these strict mandates, or King William County, they're analyzing their quarantines. I've been told a couple times that Northam is the one who's in charge. So, quote in the Gazette is from a teacher: student behavior is now sliding. Learning is suffering because educators are suffering. Morale is low and stress is high. So please change the strict policies and talk to Governor Northam about it. I'm hearing all kinds of bad things about behavior and anxiety. I'll let you know. I don't know if you're having another meeting. I wish you a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Ms. Powell.
Thank you.
Ms. Beth Hall.
Good evening. I would like to come before you this evening to share something with you. I would like to personally thank Mrs. Owensby for her service on the school board. From the first day of her membership on this board, she's been an amazing advocate for all students. This community has had many challenges during her term, and she has served with grace and fairness. She also served as a strong leader during her time as chair. In my opinion, the most significant role she has played is championing for children with disabilities. She served as a school board representative on the Special Education Advisory Committee. She also made a point to announce SEAC meetings and other special education events at school board meetings. This focus on children with special needs reminded this community that their children were seen. As a person with a disability, I'm very aware of the challenges that persons with disabilities encounter all through their life. Building strong special education programs in our schools will lay a foundation for our kids. We need more advocates like Mrs. Owensby. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall.
Mr. J. Everson.
Jay Everson, thank you. I was going to break the protocol. Mr. Kelly, this is your last meeting. You've served for a long time. In the last several years, you and I have not agreed on CIP. And from time to time, we have spoken on the phone and in person. And you have always been respectful and patient with my views and your responses. And I thank you for that. As you turn into your new as you turn a page in your life because of your new responsibilities at the shipyard, I wish you the best. You do important work there because the ships that you help build protect our freedoms and liberties so that people like me can come to before groups like this and state our views without fear of government retribution. And with that, I would like to say to you, Merry Christmas to you and your family, Happy New Year, and God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Everson. It's been a pleasure.
Ms. Anne Marie Smith.
Tough to follow. Okay. Good evening. An additional elementary school would not only be a burden to taxpayers on the initial $40 million cost, which actually is notably up from the $31 million reported back in July, but the ongoing costs of staffing, busing, bus drivers, et cetera, are not feasible or warranted. Can we reconsider the space usage at the school and elsewhere? There are libraries unused, auditoriums capable of hosting classes, but yet unused 90% of the time. There's a community center attached to James River Elementary that could be easily considered for conversion. I've actually long been concerned with its underuse and questioned its ability to screen patrons who share grounds with elementary and preschool students right there. A downward trend in enrollment and the new governor who supports charter schools also warrants pause to a new school. I'd like the money focused more toward making the school system here number one on the peninsula. This is better done with staff and policies than with space and buildings. In other words, quality over quantity. The mention of the amount of WJCC trailers we have, it's frustrating without it being said in the same sentence that the trailers were leased with COVID funds for COVID spacing measures, not for overcrowding. Many private schools in the area do not have contiguous buildings. Students travel outside to classes. This is no different than trailers. If growth in enrollment can honestly be shown to warrant additional space, the addition of wings to existing schools would be a supported solution. And thank you. I just wanted to say to Mr. Townsend, he was my son's Jamestown High School principal. I just wanted to say he was amazing, and I never told you that in person. I just wanted to recognize that in front of you guys. You wrote amazing letters, and you spoke about your dad a lot when my son was there in your letters, and I read every one of them, and I just wanted to tell you I read them to him, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
A lot of love in the room today. Mr. Steven Zabinski.
Good evening. My name is Steven Zabinski, and according to a National Highway Traffic Safety Administration article published on June 3rd of this year, an estimated 38,680 people died in motor vehicle crashes in 2020. This represents a 7.2% increase in deaths from 2019. According to the CDC, as of the 1st of December, COVID has killed 31,725 people under the age of 45 since the pandemic began 2 years ago. Some basic math tells us that in the under 45 demographic, traffic accidents killed nearly 7,000 more people in 1 year than this so-called pandemic has in the 2 years since it started. Our children fall solidly within this under 45 demographic, and based on these statistics, one could argue that they are twice as likely to die in a traffic accident as they are from contracting COVID. Since it is clear that COVID does not represent a serious threat to their health, the only possible reason for vaccinating our children is to help keep us adults safe. Considering it is our responsibility to keep them safe, exposing them to the risk of a vaccine for which no mid to long range data of any kind is available exists for our safety is practically criminal. Stop putting our children's health and safety at risk to protect our own. Get this vaccine out of our schools.
Thank you, Mr. Zabinski.
Rule Shun, I believe that's, forgive me if that's wrong.
Hello. I am sick of getting emails from this county saying that you're having vaccination clinics, and I don't know who's paying for that or what's going on with that, but it's advertising, and they're making money off the government. They're all. If you guys don't see the scam here and how it goes all the way to the top, how pharmaceutical companies are making money off all this, and it's really frustrating, and I can't believe you all are much older than I am, and I do not understand how you do not see this. It disgusts me, and I really hope that you start digging a little deeper into how the whole thing works, because I've got 2 kids that are masked all day long, and you know, they're spitting in their mask. They're basically waterboarding themselves at school, and it's disgusting. More kids have died from influenza in 2018, 2019 than they have from COVID by 200 kids under the age of 18, adolescents. And yet we never did this for influenza, and I don't know why we're doing it now, but it really pisses me off. Thank you.
Ms. Tanya Whitaker.
All right, since last time I was here, I had left a report behind from the teacher, so it definitely proved my point on the CRT is being used. It was just the one assignment that I could actually pick and show that how wrong it was. On that note, if Mr. Andrew Brown, who was the victim, that as the teacher said, was living next to you and you had the whole entire police department showing up, you would not assume he is the victim at all. There's no common sense behind that. Also, since everybody's talking about the vaccine and the it being in the school, completely wrong. You have to have a doctor to be given a medication of any sort. You can't even give my child any ibuprofen if she has a period in school. Like, why is there a nurse giving a vaccine? Another thing that really bothers me about this whole pandemic thing is how unconstitutional it is. And you guys are not standing up and saying anything about this. It is not right for me to wear a mask. I can't breathe. I have anxiety. Okay? This is not right what we are doing here. And everybody just plays along like it's normal. It's not. Next thing, transgender. How many transgender people do we have in our schools? Are they allowed to go in any bathroom as they choose? Is my daughter going to get assaulted by a male that's supposed to be, or a female that's really a male? I'm worried about these things. So I would like some answers on that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Whitaker.
Ms. Allen Parr.
Hello, Chairman Kelly, esteemed members of the board, and Dr. Herron. My name is Alyn Parm, President of the Williamsburg-James City Education Association. Speaking on behalf of the Executive Board of WJCA, we recognize the dedicated time put into the CIP for 2022-2023. As there will be a time of discussion for the CIP involving the additional space for pre-K students in elementary schools, we ask you to continue finding long-term solutions to our classroom sizes in our elementary schools for all of our students in the WJCC community. Furthermore, we say thank you to our school board members, Chairman Kelly and Ms. Ownby, for your many years of leadership in WJCC, for we have been greatly appreciative of your work. Thank you, and we will miss you. Bye.
Thank you, I appreciate it. That's all the speaker cards we have for tonight. 7.01, review the purchase request of 13 school buses from Sunny Merriman. Dr. Herron?
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Ms. Ewing will present this item this evening, and it comes out of our end-of-year spending plan. Ms. Ewing.
Thank you, Dr. Herron. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. As part of our fiscal year 21 year-end spending plan, the county and city approved the purchase of 10 school buses so we could maintain our smoothing replacement plan of purchasing 10 buses per year. This agenda item for your consideration this evening is for the purchase of 13 school buses in total, 10 utilizing the funds in our year-end spending plan, and 3 utilizing funds budgeted in our fiscal year 22 operating budget for bus replacements. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from board members? So these year-end funds, we've already talked about that previously, right?
Yes, sir.
I think we're all good with that.
I'm just, for the public's, could you just explain a little bit about the decision or difference between 53 passenger buses and 77 passenger buses and why that breakdown?
That breakdown is just based on the current school buses that are aging out at 15 years old. So that's just
it's a one-for-one replacement.
I'm sorry?
A one-for-one replacement?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Anything else? Thank you, Ms. Ewan, but I don't think you're going anywhere. 8.0 report, 8.01 audit report of the year ended June 30th, 2021. Dr. Herron?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Ewing will introduce the report from the auditor this evening. Thank you, Ms. Ewing.
Thank you, Dr. Herron. Annually, we are required to have an audit of our financial records performed by an external audit firm. This evening, Ms. Leslie Roberts, partner with Brown Edwards, is here to share with you the results of our audit for the year ended June 30th, 2021.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for having me here in this venue. It's really nice. Yeah. Well, just on a high note, the audit went well. We were able to come in and get our work done when we scheduled it. Renee and her staff were available throughout and helpful throughout. So everything went as scheduled, and no real challenges this year. So I'm just going to kind of point out some things in your audited financials that are kind of high-level things. If you have questions or you think of something that I don't touch on, then by all means, you can stop me and ask me. I always focus on what starts on page 1, which is the independent auditor's report. And this is a kind of the bottom line, where we're able to come in, look at your records, and say that they present fairly the activity and the balances, the activity for the year, and the balances at the end of the year. And if you look at the top of page 12, which, not page 1, page 12, is our opinion. And this is a clean, unmodified opinion. So yes, we were able to come in, look at your financials, and opine that they present fairly your balances and your activity. And then there's a paragraph underneath that, emphasis of matter paragraph. There was a new accounting or a new GASB standard that needed to be implemented this year, which did affect your beginning balances. Basically, the school activity funds are treated differently after analyzing that new GASB. And so that's just pointing that out. There's detail of that in note 3 in the footnotes to the financials, but basically that's kind of highlighting that for you, because that's unusual. Not really, though, because Gatsby's had a lot of changes in the last few years, but yeah. Starting on page 14 and going through page 22 is management's discussion and analysis. I'm not going to go through all of this, but this is good high-level information. If you don't read or don't want to read the whole thing, but you want to kind of get the gist of what went on during the year, this and the transmittal letter are what to read, because it gives you high-level information and gives you some comparative analysis and explanation. So I always want to point that out, because that's good information. And that's put together by your management team. And we kind of vet it and make sure that they're not saying anything that's contrary to what we found in our audit work. But basically, that it's in their words. And like I said, it's an easy read. Moving on to page 25, Exhibit 1. This is your statement of net position. It's like your balance sheet. You've got your assets, liabilities, and then what's left over for a governmental entity is net position. You can see that the lion's share of your net position is in capital assets, net investment in capital assets. The unrestricted deficit is caused completely by the net pension and OPEB liabilities, which are, as we've talked about before, their estimates, of life expectancy, when people are going to retire, what they're going to be making, what the payout will be at retirement. So there's a lot of estimates involved in that. But that's what's throwing it into a deficit overall. Moving on to the next page, page 26, is your statement of activities. And this is like your income statement. It's very hard to read. The format's crazy. But the net change is $31,368 to the negative. So that's good. You're just trying to use your resources and expend what you need and get what you need. So that's good. That's close to break even. You can see the third line from the bottom is a prior period adjustment. So that's the impact of changing the way that the school activity funds are presented. Starting on page 30 is the notes to the financials. And the notes give a lot of information about your accounting policies, and they give a deeper dive into some of the activity and the balances on your basic financials. I'm just going to point out, I think, just one or two. If you turn to page 68, this is the COVID-19 impact footnote. And basically, this is a high-level discussion of the impact of COVID-19 and the ongoing uncertainties surrounding it. And then moving on to the next page, page 69, is the detail of that prior period adjustment that I told you about. Moving on toward the end of the financials, or kind of at the end, anytime that we do an audit under governmental auditing standards, starting on page 135, we are required to report on financial reporting. So if we found anything in our procedures that we considered to be significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in financial reporting, we would report it here. We did not find anything, so this is a clean, unmodified opinion on internal control or on financial reporting and compliance and other matters. If you go to page 137, this is a listing of what we need to do it's like an audit within an audit. The Auditor of Public Accounts requires us to go in and look at your compliance with certain items, certain parts of the state code. And they're listed here, what we look at. We did not have any compliance issues when doing that audit. That's all I have on the basic financials. I was going to move on and just talk about the management letter a little bit. The management letter is required correspondence. For the most part, yours is pretty boilerplate. I'll just point out a couple things that are specific to the schools. On page 1, I always point out, it's my contact information, Katie Ward's contact information, and Sarah Kilmeyer, who was your senior associate, or your in-charge associate. So after this presentation or during the year, if you need to call me or you have questions, feel free to do that. Renee can give you my contact information, but it's right here as well. Moving on to the first page of the letter, like I said, most of it's boilerplate. You did have, if you look at that second paragraph, it's talking about adopting that new GASB. And then if you have any sensitive estimates embodied in your financial statements, we just emphasize them here. And basically, the OPEB and the pension liability are the biggest estimate. Like I said, that is estimates based on discount rates, life expectancy, a lot of different things rolled into one. And it's done by actuaries, not me. We take the actuarial information. And also, since you do have a very significant investment in capital assets, the depreciable lives that you assign to those is a significant estimate. If we encountered any significant difficulties, we would put that in writing here and let you know that. I like to say if we were having difficulties, you would know before now. This is just the formal documentation. And of course, I told you when I started this presentation, we had no difficulties. We had no uncorrected or corrected misstatements, so we had no audit adjustments that we needed to make as a result of our procedures. And we had no disagreements with management. Appendix A is the letter that management signs. It's called the Management Representation Letter. That's included in here, and it's kind of like a hold harmless letter that you provided everything to us, forthcoming with all the information we requested and so forth. And also there is a large appendix, or I don't know if we call it an appendix, but a large section that has the new GASB pronouncements that are coming down the road and when they're coming. So I started to say that was unusual to have implementation, but it really isn't. They've been pretty busy in the last several years. I also have the Student Activity Fund report here. I didn't know if you wanted me to speak on that a little bit or not.
Sure.
Okay. Well, basically, we came in and we audited the school activity funds much earlier. We do that like in the later summer period, and then wrap that up usually pretty much before we begin the other audit, the financial statement audit. But I do want to point out that this has an opinion too, and the independent auditor's report is the same. It's the same philosophy. Were we able to come in and look at the school activity fund records and say that the balances and the activity present fairly what went on? And if you look at the top of page 2, you can see there's our audit opinion, and it's another clean, unmodified audit opinion. So just pointing that out. And the school activity fund, if you look to the page 3, this is a summary of all of the activity, all the schools and what they had at the balance at the beginning of the year, the receipts, disbursements, ending balance. If you look, there's not much change overall. If you went from 1.335753 to 1.368,961. So the ins and out kind of wound up about the same amount. And then back in the supplementary information, this has information about each school, all the clubs and activities that the school activity funds were tracking during the year, and the activity of each club and fund. So lots of information at the individual school level. Just like the financial statement audit, the school activity fund audit has a management letter, which is required correspondence. And again, most of yours is boilerplate. Again, you've got mine and Katie's information here on page 1 for context. And then you can see on page 1, we don't have any new pronouncements or implementation, so there's nothing there. We had no difficulties. We had no misstatements, no disagreements with management, so very similar to the letter you saw before. And then the management letter is also in Appendix B. And then there's another letter, and this letter is on comments, internal control comments and suggestions. And we do just have one comment, and this isn't really one that we're saying you need to fix. We're just pointing it out to you that there is a segregation of duties issue at most, if not all, of the schools because the bookkeeper is handling all the funds. Now, that's handled or mitigated by the review of other people and having receipts and so forth and so on. But basically, you've got a one-person function there, and the disbursements are approved. And then the management control observations for each school If we had anything that we noticed that we didn't consider to be material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, but we just wanted to bring to your attention because it was an exception, then they'll be in here. Again, these aren't big deals. If they were big deals, they'd be in here as a significant deficiency or material weakness. But this is also by school, listed by school, and some schools have a few findings and some have none. So it's just a summary of that. Any question on either audit or any of these reports?
Ms. Hummel.
I just have to say thank you for your hard work on this. I work with Master of Accounting students, and today I had to sit through a bunch of presentations on explain it like you're talking to a fifth grader. So anyway,
that right?
Thank you for trying to go through these 3 books worth of stuff and explaining it to me like I'm a fifth grader. So I really appreciate it. And Gatsby, you know, the great nighttime reading.
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to want to read that little excerpt that's part of the management letter, but yeah, there's a lot going on, and I do try to make it understandable and try to make it something that is meaningful to you.
So thank you. Thank you very much. It's
Yeah.
a lot of work.
Yeah, and yeah, I will mention, you know, one of the things that we're doing as a profession is trying to get our pipeline going by letting students at the high school level know about the accounting profession. So we'll be looking into that. If you have any schools that you'd like us to visit and just talk to them about the profession, I mean, people don't know about it. A lot of schools don't even have bookkeeping classes anymore. So that's one of our initiatives. I'm the head of our DEI task force, and that's one of the things we're looking to. So if there's some high schools that we can get in and talk to your students about a career in accounting, we'd be more than happy to do so.
Thanks a lot.
Dr. Worley, the first one on your left here, will be talking to. Ms. Cook?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, thank you, Ms. Roberts, for coming tonight and also for your service in the community. I know you support a lot of the nonprofits in our community and help them with their financials. I'm just, you know, I look forward to reading this in its entirety, and I promise you that I will. But for those of us who are, you know, sort of used to hearing this every year, I think sometimes we forget to step back and kind of maybe explain some of the, like a fifth grader. So when you look at a government agency and it appears on the statement of net position that we have a deficit, that could be alarming to some people. And I've heard some people express concern about our future liabilities around post-employment benefits, particularly about the pension liabilities. So can you just talk about that, and that, you know, we're not going to have to write a $124 million check tomorrow?
No, that's a long-term liability, and that's, like I said, based on a lot of estimates and actuarial valuations. Basically, that's not specific to James City County schools. It's every school system across the state is underfunded on their pension plan. There's a few boards, commissions, and authorities that are actually overfunded, but for the most part, all the school boards are underfunded. And that's a factor of a lot of things. People retiring, what happened with their investments over a period of time, and so forth. And so that's something that will need to be made up for over a period of time. Now, you know, investment performance, that was one of the things, you know, the discount rate is huge. If you change the discount rate and raise it by just 1%, it just flips your liability all around, you know, and changes it a lot. So, I mean, one thing is to take that with a grain of salt. There's a lot of estimates in there. And another thing is it's a long-term liability. It's something that you're working towards. It's not like everybody that's on the payroll today is going to retire tomorrow, you know, and need these benefits. So, and like I said, if you were to pull York counties or any of the localities around here and look at their school liability and what it does to their deficit overall or their equity position, it's the same.
Thank you.
So it's something that VRS is working on. It's not specific to James City County.
Thank you.
Ms. Owenby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one specific question, but thank you, too, for giving us all this information. I know each of our schools work really hard to manage the money and to make sure that there are no findings. And we do have a handful of schools that had what, in my mind, seems like minor findings. And I'm just wondering how that compares with our our peers, like the number of schools and those?
It's very good. It's very good compared to your peers.
Thank you.
And I won't give you specific examples,
No,
but
specific.
y'all do very well.
Very good is what I wanted to hear.
You do very well.
Right, thank you so much. And I think that's with the hard work of all of our staff. I know everyone spends a lot of time making sure that that's accurate.
Dr. Beers?
Yeah, I echo the comments of my colleagues that I very much support all the hard work you've done. But I think the other thing that the report also points out is our financial stability and the skill of our all of those in the school division that deal with our finances is, and as you just said, very good compared to other school divisions. And I think our finance department really needs to be commended for being as careful as they have been in doing this, doing your work.
Any other comments from board members? Thank you much for coming in and doing us a great job explaining this. There's a lot of information here that Mrs. Cook
I could talk about this all day, so if
Mrs. Cook
you
is
have
gonna
questions,
read.
feel free to call me.
Mrs. Cook really likes this stuff, so she's gonna be getting into that. And I'd just like to echo.
Well, she can call me.
I'd also like to echo Dr. Beers that the financial reporting from our schools is because of the standards set by our finance folks and the level that they of expectation of handling that money. And so I appreciate that. It engenders trust for those who are participating in the school level and in club activities and all that. And so it's a really great thing for our school system to see. So I appreciate that. Thank you much.
Okay, thank you.
8.02, School Board Annual Self-Evaluation. Mr. Dowell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have the pleasure of gathering and compiling comments from my board colleagues for this year's board self-evaluation, and I believe you've got it there for your review. I think I would just kind of summarize what I gathered and heard from my 6 colleagues, and that our strength and our weakness, if I could put it that way. Major strength that I think that I saw throughout these comments was in the way that we work together for the good of the students and for families. Don't always agree on the right path or the one path in that direction. However, I think we all get that we all care for the same outlook, and that's for children and families to be successful in the school division. I would say that probably the thing we could probably most improve on is going to be communication amongst board members. Apart from these public meetings, just the email flow and picking up the phone, spending time at the coffee shop, with a colleague or two. I guess we can't do two, a colleague. And that's what makes it difficult. So those are some of the takeaways, if I can not take up too much time on this, some of the takeaways. But what I think I would appreciate having the opportunity to do is review this at our next board retreat, and going into a little bit greater depth at that time.
Excellent. Thank you for your work in putting that evaluation together and compiling all those comments. Any other comments from board members?
Thank you.
Yeah, the evaluation is always great to do an evaluation and kind of understand what the collective thinks, and there's a lot of agreement on the evaluation, but always some opportunity for self-reflection and kind of setting yourself up for the path for moving forward. So with that, 8.03, Portrait of a Graduate, Class of 2021. Dr. Herron?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Worley will start off our presentation this evening, focusing on the achievements of the class of 2021. Dr. Worley.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Herron. Tonight I will share with you information related to WJCC's Portrait of a Graduate for the class of 2021. The information presented this evening represents a collaborative effort between our school leadership, our schools, our principals, accountability, school counseling, our graduation coaches and staff. And before I dive in, I'd just like to thank and recognize our high school principals for being here this evening to support this presentation and for championing this work in their schools. As a part of our overview, we will look at SAT and ACT results, along with graduation rates and advanced placement information for the class of 21. During the course of the next few slides, we will refer to information on the screen as well as data on your handout. The cohort class of 2021 began actually with 952 students, with 896 of the 952 graduating on time in June of 2021. The data chart here summarizes the breakdown of demographics seen in shades of blue on the left, as well as reporting groups seen in shades of green on your right. It is important to note that graduates may be in more than one of these categories. This year, we are excited to celebrate our graduation data, as we saw increases across many data points. The class of 2021 had an on-time graduation rate of 94.1%, with 39.6% of students earning a standard diploma and 54.5% earning an advanced studies diploma. The on-time graduation rate is the percentage of students graduating in 4 years, and you can see that our cohort completion rate, also known as the CCR, is 96.5%. And this includes our on-time graduates, our special diplomas, our GEDs, and students completing high school in 5 years or more. And finally, the dropout rate for this class was 2.3%, or 22 students. This next slide shows our 3-year trend rates for on-time graduation. WJCC graduation rates are represented in blue on the left, and the state rates are on orange on the right. Our current overall on-time graduation rate exceeds the state average at 94.1%. And division-wide, this equates to an overall increase of 2.6% from the previous graduating class. This next slide I'm very excited about. I just had to throw that out there. Let's take a deeper look in reviewing our on-time graduation rates by reporting groups. The blue bars show graduation rates for individual reporting groups, and the gray box indicates the actual number of students in each reporting group for the class of 2021. It's important to note that students can be in more than one of these reporting groups. For example, a student may be counted in the white reporting group and the economically disadvantaged group. But we are excited to see the growth within the reporting groups, and we'll highlight this a little more on the next couple of slides. The next slide shows our reporting group comparisons with the state. The state is represented in orange on the left, and Williamsburg is represented in blue on the right. We exceed the state percentage in all but 2 categories, and I'll give you a few seconds to look at those individual groups. This slide shows 3-year trend data for our reporting groups. 2019 is represented by the dark blue bar on the left, 2020 by the gray bar in the middle, and the class of 2021 is represented by the lighter blue bar on the right. As you can see from the last 3 slides, we have much to celebrate across our reporting groups. Almost every group saw growth, with one remaining steady. Additionally, we saw a significant increase within 2 reporting groups, our Hispanic and English learners. Now we'll take a look at our individual high school data. For each high school slide, you will see a 3-year trend, with the school as the first bar in gray, division in the center in blue, and the state in orange. The Jamestown High School class of 2021 has an on-time graduation rate of 96.1%. This rate exceeds the state and shows a 3 percentage point gain over 2020. The Lafayette High class of 2021
has an on-time graduation rate of 94.4%. The Lafayette on-time graduation exceeds the state and is a 6 percentage point gain over 2020. The War Hill class of 2021 has an on-time graduation rate of 92.1%, and the War Hill High School on-time graduation rate is close to the state average and remains steady over the last 3 years. Moving on from our graduation rates, we're going to speak about our SAT scores on the next couple of slides. The SAT is officially known as the Scholastic Aptitude Test, and the American College Test we will also speak to as well, better known as the ACT test. You will notice for both the SAT and the ACT, we had smaller participation rates this year, and this is connected with the pandemic and its impact on education. We did notice over this year that many colleges and universities did not require an SAT or an ACT score for admission. Let's look at the SAT first. Williamsburg had 322 graduates participate in the SAT. There are two main subtests combined, reading, writing, and math, which are both scored on a scale of 200 to 800 possible points. The highest composite score for the SAT is a 1600. This slide shows the overall composite score for WJCC as 1,183. Williamsburg students who took the test in 2021 continue to outperform both the state and the national average scores. In combined reading and writing, Williamsburg-James City County students' average score was 603. This is 19 points above the state and 70 points higher than the national average. On the SAT math, Williamsburg-James City County students' average score was 580, also slightly greater than the state and our national averages. As a point of reference, you can see here 3 years of historical data revealing that Williamsburg-James City County continues to outperform the state and the nation. The numbers in smaller font represent the number of test takers in Williamsburg-James City County. Again, you will notice a significant decrease in participating numbers for the class of 2021. Next, we will briefly look at how our students performed on the ACT, which serves as the indication of the extent to which students are prepared for college-level work in reading, English, math, and science. Scores range from 1 to a maximum of 36. The ACT writing is an optional section. It is important to note that ACT reports on all students taking the test. So this slide reflects total participation versus data on the class of 21 alone as reported with the SAT. Students earn one overall ACT score, commonly known as the ACT composite score, which is an average of the 4 test scores in English, math, reading, and science. The composite score falls between the ranges of 1 and 36. During the 2021 school year, 47 students participated in the ACT. The WJCC overall ACT composite score is 25.8. This score is slightly above the state and 5 points ahead of the nation. The final ACT slide compares our overall composite scores with the state and the nation over the last 3 years. Next, we will take a look at our AP results. The College Board's Advanced Placement Program, often referred to as AP, offers high school students opportunities to complete college-level courses and potentially earn college credit while in high school. Advanced Placement curriculum is designed to challenge students with rigorous content and end-of-course exams. Colleges and universities often consider awarding credit to students who score a 3, 4, or 5 on an AP exam and exempt them from coursework. Students across all 3 high schools participate in AP courses with the option to participate in the exam. This slide shows the percentage of AP exams with a score of 3 or higher at the division level, as well as a breakdown by high school. The next slide breaks down information over 3 years with data by division and school. Across the division in 2021, 630 students participated in 1,205 AP tests. Remember that students can take more than one test based on the number of AP courses they are taking. This slide shows the percentage of tests at each school where scores were a 3, 4, or 5. For example, 1,205 AP tests were taken in Williamsburg, James City County schools. Of those, students earned a 3, 4, or 5 on 63% of the tests. As you can see, we do have much to celebrate with regards to our overall success of our graduates. We will continue to build on our successes and focus ahead on methods to continually close gaps and ensure every student graduates on time. One essential component to this success is our continued teamwork and collaboration among key personnel, along with the enhancement of strategies to move students forward, including a focus on individualized intervention, our graduation coaches, school improvement specialists, teachers, administrators, counselors, staff, central office support, and families all contribute to this effort. So you may ask, what do we do differently this year to support our students? And how will we continue this progress? Our student-focused intervention strategies make timely intervention a priority, and our strategies are implemented by a flexible staff who constantly monitor and adjust instruction to meet student needs. Some strategies include, but are not limited to, the expansion and refinement of our graduation teams at each school, led by our graduation coaches and principals. Teams track students by cohort beginning in the 9th grade. We also increased opportunities for in-course intervention, remediation, and credit recovery. Credit recovery opportunities were offered throughout the school year and summer school. We had focused, intentional plans and outlined structures for intervention to help us prioritize time on Focus Fridays and after school, including in-person and remote opportunities for assistance. We offered small groups and tiered instruction, and we used student goal setting and contracts with students that allowed them to take ownership of their learning and progress. It enhanced our partnerships with families and allowed our teams to celebrate small victories along the way. Our teams continue these efforts through summer school to help all students get back on track. At the high school level, we had 4 summer graduates, including 1 early graduate. Additionally, 195 students recovered 399 high school credits, and 102 students earned accelerated credits. So what does this look like in our high school specifically? Our schools took full advantage of their time on Focus Fridays and after school to provide tiered intervention, remediation, extra support for earning verified credits, and to facilitate extra help and intervention. We also took advantage of our remote resources like Zoom, which allowed teachers to work with students and families at different times based on need. Teachers also prioritized time to help students catch up and recover low and failing grades while taking a course. And our division staff collaborated with teachers to support instruction, planning, and the delivery of lessons. Our graduation coaches conducted hundreds of home visits to locate students who had drifted away during the pandemic, and we identified resources, communicated with families, and re-engaged the students in school. We have hundreds of data points and highlights with regards to work of our schools. 2 examples include one graduation coach who made 68 home visits with 553 miles on her car. Another high school was able to recover 710 credits between March and June. I would now like to invite Dr. Dan Miami to share highlights from the work of his team. They celebrated a 6-point increase in their overall on-time graduation rate. Dr. Miami.
Thank you, Dr. Worley. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the school board, and Dr. Herron. I'm honored to share an example of the incredible work of our staff over the course of the 2021 school year. First and foremost, we embraced every moment, mornings, afternoons, evenings, and even weekends and holidays to engage with all students and to proactively get students on board, and including our seniors. Secondly, I'd like to share with you one of the special stories about a 2021 graduate to provide some insight into the effort put forth by our community to ensure all students have an opportunity to graduate. Last year, we had a senior with health issues that was displaced due to financial constraints exacerbated by the pandemic. We lost contact with the student in the fall of 2020, but through our counselors, social worker, and graduation coach utilizing their community resources, we were able to locate the student in late April of 2021. The student was working 60-plus hours a week to cover living costs for the student and siblings. We were able to provide the student with access to community resources, including food and clothing. This was the first step in addressing the looming issue of the potential dropping out of the student. The student needed 8 credits to graduate, 2 math, 1 science, 1 English, 2 social studies, and 2 elective courses, which is over a school year's worth of coursework needing to be completed in less than 2 months. Through access to all the available resources from traditional class time, recovery modules, and Canvas, Focus Friday tutoring sessions, VLP online classes, and a core group of faculty and staff putting in extra hours to support the student was able to complete all 8 credits prior to graduation in June. The student actually completed all the required coursework at 3 p.m. the day prior to graduation. Our social worker was able to secure a cap and gown, and since the student did not have transportation, our graduation coach drove the student to graduation so the student could celebrate the memorable event with their peers. This is just one of many stories that I could share about what all 3 high schools do to support our WJCC students. And for me, having the privilege to serve as a principal of Lafayette, it was this no-quit mentality of our faculty and staff, coupled with the support of our community, that made it possible for this student to succeed. Stories such as the one that I've just shared solidify the fact that when we say at Lafayette, we serve every Ram every day, we mean it. It is this mantra, the strong sense of community and positive culture at Lafayette, that makes us all proud to call ourselves Rams. I want to thank you for your time this evening and ongoing support of our students and their families, and a special thank you to Mr. Kelly and Ms. Ownby for your service.
So as you can see, through the stories that Dr. Mayani shared, there are many more at all 3 high schools. And this was another challenging year. However, our schools did rise to the occasion, and they strategically guided our students to the finish line. We are very proud of our growth this year, and as we saw a significant increase in our on-time graduation rate. A graduation rate is a percentage representing a number, and our school teams note each individual name connected with this number, including their needs, their strengths, and their goals for the future. This is hard work, but it's also heart work, facilitated by a school community who really cares. So the faces you see on the slide represent why we do what we do and all the efforts that were put forth this year. I'd like to thank our schools for that, and I thank you for your time this evening, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
The first thing, Dr. Worley, is could you introduce all of your principals that are here
I
today?
certainly could. We have Dr. Carroll from War Hill High School. We have Mr. Townsend from Jamestown High School and Dr. Mayani from Lafayette High School.
Thank you all for your hard work and for the leadership of your staffs. It's great to see the work that you guys do. Board members? Ms. Young.
I just want to thank the principals for the wonderful job they do, because being on SAC, it's always exciting to see those students, and they proudly represent you. I just want you to know that.
Mr. Dow?
I have a question, but I want to say thank you and the principals that cared for me and for students like me. So I thank all of you for the hard work and the diligent work that you guys do for every single student. My one question, you gave us numbers for those that had taken the SAT and taken the ACT, excuse me, and it's been some years. I barely remember taking the SAT. I don't remember having the ACT available to me. Why would a student choose one over the other, and would they take both?
I think a lot of that has to do with what the school or university they're looking for requires and what their career path is, but that's a big reason why they choose either the ACT or the SAT.
Would we see students taking both? Would that be?
Sometimes we do see
some redundancy in those numbers?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Spoken like the father of a high schooler. Ms. Ownby?
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Thank you, Dr. Worley. It almost brought tears to my eyes because I think that our division really did work very hard, and I know it was at the very granular, individual, student-by-student level, and so I appreciate that. And then just wanted to point out a couple things, and this is really for the community. I noticed our special education rate is 16%. Can you share with us, like, the statewide number?
I didn't hear the
Special
first.
ed, our special ed percentage
Yes.
is 16% of our student population. What's the statewide number for that?
I don't know that I have that with me, but I can certainly get it for you. I did the trends for 3 years, but I can provide that for you. But
Okay.
we are competitive. I mean, we're performing very well. I mean, we're almost in line with all students. We are very proud of that.
The number of students with disabilities
Oh.
in our division is
Oh, I
now
thought you said the-
16%. When I came on the board, it was 13%.
Okay.
So I was just curious what that statewide number is.
Ms. Bourgeois, do you happen to know that number off the top of your head or pretty close to it? No? I think we are a little bit higher than the state, but we'll certainly get that for you.
Yes, it's
Do
my
you have
understanding
a-
that we're higher too. So that would just be an interesting benchmark because I think those demographics in our community are changing. Likewise, the number of students who are economically disadvantaged, that number has ticked up. When I
Yes.
came on the board, it was around 34%, and now it's 38%.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to know how that compares to the state. And then again, with regard to AP exams, I see there's significant differences between Jamestown and Lafayette and War Hill with the number of exams taken. I was just wondering what kind of strategies we've considered or have done to try to bring parity
Right.
with
We,
AP exams.
We did see some change in that, obviously, when we moved to making it an option. We've talked about looking in the future whether we want to go back to having all students take the exam. We do encourage it. We set the expectation that we want them to. We also provide support if there's an issue with, financial support for taking the exam. It's something that we're constantly looking at, and we would like to see that number go up as far as the amount of students taking exams.
Thank you. And then just one last question with regard to advanced studies. Do we, and this, you can get this information to us later, although I won't get it later. Advanced studies, how many states offer a standard diploma in a, I know that there are states that only offer a standard diploma, and advanced studies is something that we do in Virginia, but I'm just curious, who else does it?
That's something we would have to look at different states and provide that information for the board.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
December 31st. You're here till December 31st.
Okay, by December 31st.
Years?
What I hear tonight is that we've heard so many examples of students and teachers helping each other over the course of this academic year, and seeing those numbers go up really demonstrates that. And I think the other thing is, used to be a cliche, we used to talk, oh, no child left behind. I think the school division and the numbers and that wonderful example of the student at Lafayette High School, I think real efforts are made in all of our schools to really make sure no child is left behind. And I very much applaud that. And I also would say that it really is a community of supporters that bring those students along and account for, I think, that increase. It's teachers, it's support staff, it's principal, it's parents, as well as the students that, working together, have done that. And in spite of, what a challenging year it's been. I just think it's incredible, and just shows once again how hardworking our teachers and staff are.
Ms. Cook?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, Mr. Dow, one of the, as a parent of high schoolers who have taken the SAT, ACT, one of the factors I think that impacts here is that it's easy to take the SAT locally. ACT, you have to go down the peninsula a little bit further. So I think that is part, in addition to, as Dr. Worley said, what colleges are requiring or asking for. I just wanted to commend the staff on this presentation. Since I've been on the board, it has gotten better and better each year, and I think you all have done a really good job of painting an accurate picture of the population, their successes, their challenges, and the work that you do. So every year, just this gets better. So thank you very much. I particularly am excited about the improvements in the graduation round for English language learners. That's, you know, I know that's been a struggle. It's great to see such progress. We have more work to do. You know, we can get better there, but I do appreciate the work that's happened. So I have a question about, one question and then another comment. Do you think your ability to make that rapid progress student by student to really impact that graduation rate and get those kids to the other side, has there been a correlation between that work and then the schedule of taking 8 classes a year long versus 4x4? Has that made that easier? Is it that irrelevant? Has it made it harder? Or is that just totally not even a relevant question?
I don't think we have specific data to speak to that. I really think that the work that's happened since March of 2020, everyone has just dug in and reached and gone above and beyond to help every student. And, you know, our teachers do that work all along, even before the pandemic, but I think just how we, each challenge that we're faced with, our teachers grab it and take it head on. If we don't have an answer, we collaborate together to get an answer. We're very creative with the time we use. We have a lot of resources now that we didn't have pre-pandemic that will allow us to work with students in small groups in different settings, whether remotely or in person. So we're really trying to take all of every lesson that we've learned and everything that we've gained through this process and continuing it and refining it to continue to meet all of our students where they are.
And just one more comment. You know, again, being a high school parent, I have over the last, you know, better part of 2 years, I've had the opportunity to bear witness to what you're talking about. I've seen at football games or at other events, or just by way of just listening to my children, all 3 of the principals and their teams reach out to individual kids in the community and make sure that they graduate. So I've seen it. I could tell you stories at all 3 high schools, and it's really remarkable. So I'm just very, very grateful.
Ms. Hummel.
I just want to pile on the kudos to all the principals and the behind-the-scenes people that are working so hard to get to the point where you can present this material in a positive light, which is really, really so wonderful. And I'm appreciative as a school board member, as a parent, as a community member, just knowing that we have, without getting choked up, that we have these caring individuals in our school system that are going to reach out and do the most that they can to support every single child in our school division, regardless of need, regardless of situation. So I just really want to let you know I'm so appreciative of that. On a just a different tack, just a kind of a question about, from my standpoint, I'm not seeing that we're probably going to have, I think there's going to be a change in ACT and SAT test taking in the future. I'm not really sure what the future is.
Right.
And it'll be interesting in 4 or 5 years from now to know if it's even part of your portrait of a graduate. I just don't know how much it's going to mean anymore, which is interesting. So that's just kind of an observation. And then when you are looking at the big picture, to me, I like to see the whole, WJCC versus the state versus the country. That is meaningful to me. The charts that say our demographics are very meaningful to me. I think sometimes when you get to the individual, like, scorecards, so to speak, of this high school versus this high school versus this high school, it's very easy for people to pass judgment on, oh, wow, that's really great, or this one has a little more, when you don't see the picture of the demographics of each school and the need of each school and the challenges that are inherent with the demographics. And so I think when all of us talk about parity, when we talk about, and I think our school division is going in the right direction, we're putting budget-wise the budget where the need is, which I would just encourage you to continue to do because I think it's really easy to pass judgment unnecessarily as just someone looking at a report like this. So that's it. Thank you.
Any other comments from board members? At the end of the day, this is what it's all about. Getting kids across the line and getting them to graduation day. And you know, to Mrs. Hummel's point about all of our teachers and the work that they put in and their commitment to our kids, it's just, it's extraordinary. So when I look at SAT and ACT and I kind of wish that those kids missed that rite of passage of trying to figure out how this word relates to that word. I don't know. It's crazy. Do we think that the highest level of our students, the higher level students, are taking the SAT more now than they were? Because it seems our numbers have come down. The ACT numbers came down dramatically, which might be a little bit COVID related to Mrs. Cook's point about having to travel down the peninsula. But our scores have come up, and is that because maybe only our higher level students are taking it?
I don't know directly if it's higher level, but fewer students for sure. And the ACT has been trending downward pre-pandemic. That number was going down, and and we did mention in some earlier presentations, as Ms. Cook said, that we don't give those ACT tests locally in our school division. We do have closer access to SAT. But I can't speak to directly, you know, who exactly took the test and.
Sure. Thank you for this. Thank you for this information. I think it points out to the great school system that we have and the great work that our teachers do and our administrators, and there's still work to be done, and I think everybody recognizes that, and there's, for every student, there's some work to be done, right? And so, but I appreciate all the effort that goes into getting our kids across the finish line. It's really what this work is all about. So, thank you. Else? 8.04 for WJCC Schools 2021-22. Dr. Herron?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Keever will lead off tonight, giving a brief overview of from WJCC forward on our current health data and some other things. Thank you, Mr. Keever.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, school board members. This evening, would like to share with you, as we've tried to do on a monthly basis, some of the key metrics going on within our community and our school division, to include out of the gate the level of community transmission as defined by the Center for Disease Control COVID data tracker. When we shared this information with you, I believe in the beginning part of November, you may recall more yellow and orange on the map. The map has become more and more red over the course of November into early December. The data that you're looking at is a 7-day period. It's represented from November 29th through December 5th for case rate, and November 27th through December 3rd for percent positivity. The snapshot was taken, like I said, about in a 7-day period of time. Case rate in James City County is in the 100 level with positivity at about 6%. And over the last 7 days in James City County, the cases are up about 10% and positivity is up nearly 3%. Cases in Williamsburg are hovering around 20, with the percent positivity about 36%. Again, there are increases in Williamsburg as well over the course of the last few weeks. Additionally, we like to share with you the vaccination coverage. This data, we have typically been reporting to you the percentage of 12 to 17-year-olds who are vaccinated. With the inclusion of the 5 to 11 grouping, that number has fallen off the bottom of the screen on the VDH site, but I can share with you that in the Williamsburg, James City County community, 40.6% of our 12 to 17-year-olds are vaccinated. When you include our 5 to 11, that number goes down to 22.8%, and that's fully vaccinated. I want to make sure I mention that as well. Again, school level impact, this data was updated twice today. Once when I first did the slide, and then later this afternoon as additional cases continue to be reported. So 28 students are currently have tested positive for COVID or in isolation. 144 students have been identified as close contacts or in quarantine. The staff positive is 5, and the staff in quarantine is 2. When we talked in early November, we had provided 125 screening tests. That number is up at 538 now. We have done screening testing in every one of our schools, and in some schools we're into the second round of testing, in some cases even close to the third round of testing. And then, as we shared in early November, we had given out 236 of those at-home test kits. That number is up to 809 at this juncture, and we've actually asked for additional test kits to be able to provide to our families. We've asked for that from the State VISTA program. And finally, I wanted to report to you that we are doing the follow-up vaccination clinic from our November 20th event. On November 20th, we were pleased to be able to provide vaccination to 435 individuals, 300 of whom were children 5 to 11. 135 of the participants were 12 and older, children, booster shots, etc. And we anticipate having a fairly large group with us again on Saturday, the 11th. The registration information for that particular event was shared last week. I'll pause there and be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Board members. Ms. Owenby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Keever, since we did have speakers tonight talk about the vaccination clinics, can you explain who's giving the vaccinations and the training, and if we're making money on that?
I'll do the best I can to explain it, Ms. Owenby. The vaccinators for this particular event, we're partnering with Williamsburg Drug Company. Williamsburg Drug Company, like other pharmacies in the local area, have been certified to be able to provide vaccine through the Virginia Department of Health. And they are one of the local vendors that has the ability to be able to do mass vaccination clinics. Williamsburg, James City County Schools receives no funding for vaccines or providing the vaccine service in our schools. Through your insurance, the vendor may be repaid, and or if there is not an insurance scenario, the vendor is able to submit that and be reimbursed by the government.
Thank you. And then just to make it clear, our staff are not giving the vaccines?
That is correct. Our staff are volunteering to check people in when they arrive, to work in the parking lot, to make sure there's a smooth process, and to ensure that folks have a welcoming atmosphere as they come for the clinic, but our staff are not providing the vaccines.
Thank you.
Ms. Young?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have a question about the map. The map with the red and everything else. It talked about community transition rates. There you go. Does it break down that into demographics as far as age level?
Ms. Young, I probably would want to go back into the CDC tracker and look. Typically, I don't drill in on that map for this particular piece. In terms of our reporting, this is one feature, but the other feature for us would be our daily posting of the snapshot on our website, which shows how many students have tested positive, or how many staff members have tested positive, and how many are in quarantine.
Is there a differentiation, if I can say that word, a differentiation between which type of COVID they're being tested for?
Not that I'm aware of. Do you mean relative to the variant?
Right, the different variants.
I am not aware of that being reported differently at this juncture.
Okay, thank you.
Val, you can go.
No, I was
Okay.
wanting to.
Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you. On your last slide, you've indicated that I think it was the December 11th, or I guess it's coming up, December 11th, offering the vaccination clinic to unvaccinated WJCC staff. That's coming up. Correct me if I'm wrong, were we already at a high level of staff?
91%.
In particular, excuse me?
91%.
91%. And
Yes, sir.
were those staff, including teachers, or was that teachers that we identified?
That was all staff.
Self-identified staff. Do you have that broken out for teachers, teachers' aides? Maybe not.
We have the data based on what was reported to us and what we've been able to confirm back when we did that reporting in the early fall into the year. We could probably break it down for the board in a follow-up communication.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Cook?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to follow up on what Mr. Dow said and what Ms. Ownby asked about. I just want to thank you for providing the opportunity for people to get vaccinated themselves or their children should they choose. I mean, obviously, it's a choice, so I really do appreciate just providing that opportunity and making that easier, because the more that happens, the more likely we are to move away from high levels of community transmission, which is, I think, what we all want, so that we can get back to a little bit more of a normal operation. So anyway, so thank you for doing that and taking the time. And you mentioned, Mr. Keever, monthly updates. So will you be providing an update in January as well? Because I anticipate that things will be changing at the state level. So
I was on the monthly frame, sort of referring back to previous months. I wasn't forecasting or foreshadowing that I would be doing it moving forward, but at the pleasure of the board and the superintendent, I'd be happy to share whatever information is necessary.
because you used that word, I thought I'd ask.
I'm sure, Ms. Cook, when we look at the data, if it's significantly different and there's new information to report, we certainly will provide the information for the board.
I suspect there'll be new information to report next.
Yes, ma'am.
So Virginia Beach, I guess, is changing to where they're not quarantining vaccinated, asymptomatic, exposed students.
High school level only, Mr. Keever, as you received that communication?
That is what I read in the superintendent's newsletter that I received as a parent. How about that?
Gotcha. So we have 144 students in quarantine. If we were to have something similar, how many would we have back in school? 10, 20?
We'd have to break it down by level to answer the question and look at those who are in quarantine now that are high schoolers.
Right. I don't have that data readily accessible to share out. And I think that the other scenario in Virginia Beach, based on the statement that I read from the superintendent, as well as what I read in the news media, felt compelled to make that determination based on careful consideration with the Virginia Beach Health Department, and I think felt so inclined to go that direction. And as we have throughout the pandemic, we are in consultation with the Peninsula Health Department, as well as potentially querying our health advisory group as well to make any type of determination in terms of shifts in protocol.
Okay. But as Ms. Cook said, more to come on that, and so we'll see where that goes in the new year. Any other comments from board members? Thank you, Mr. Keever. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
8.05 fiscal year 23-32 superintendent's proposed capital improvement plan discussion. Dr. Herron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have a couple of slides to provide for the board this evening, just some additional information as we looked at the capacity, or for example, our elementary schools, if we were to take pre-K students out of the school. And I believe Ms. Ewan's going to do the first two, and then Mr. Keever is going to take up and take us through the second two slides this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Herron. Since one of the options being considered to address pre-K to 5 space is to build 2 centrally located sites to serve the pre-K students, we have developed this capacity chart showing just elementary students. In this chart, we have adjusted the effective capacity previously shared for this year as the classrooms currently being used for pre-K students, which is either 15 or 8 students per classroom, could be repurposed and used for K to 2 students, which would be 20 students per classroom. This would change the effective capacity from 5,540 to 5,725. Utilizing the Future Think Low projection for this year, you can see that over the next 10 years, we would slowly increase to approximately 85% capacity in 27-28, but we would not reach 90% capacity until beyond the 10 years. Utilizing the Future Think moderate projection for this year with the revised effective capacity information for only K-5 students, you can see that over the next 10 years, we would increase each year to 91.1% in 2930.
The second part of the discussion this evening is to try to help ensure that the board is aware of the math that is associated with some of the document that we provided on Friday during the joint meeting. This is the high-level math associated with option 1, and that included building a 10th elementary school with the pre-K space. Approximately 850 students would be served. Based on some of the industry standards and discussion with architects, we multiplied 126 square feet by the number of K-5 students and then lowered that total to 100 square feet for our pre-K students, different spaces, different needs associated there. There are several different cost estimates that you could utilize in thinking about the cost per square foot. We felt like it was appropriate to use 2 examples. We provided the cost at $295 per square foot to also then include 20% in soft costs, and that's how the number $39.2 million was determined. There's also an indication across the industry that cost per square foot continues to go up. So we wanted to provide for you what we think is probably at this juncture a worst case scenario at $311 per square foot, plus the additional 20% in soft costs. So this particular option in today's dollars, as if we were able to start building tomorrow, would be like $41.3 million. It's important as we think about this to also consider that we can't put a shovel in the ground tomorrow, that there is going to be a period of time that it takes us to get this ready. And so we've also included a 6% escalation so that the maximum cost associated with this particular option is somewhere between $49.5 million and $52.2 million. The final point at the very bottom of the slide is to suggest that right now in the CIP that has been brought forward, it's approximately $31 million for both design and build that's currently sitting in there. So there would need to be the addition of $20 million. Similar math want to provide for you relative to the option or the option 2. And option 2 was one we spent a little bit of time talking about on Friday in the joint session. 650 students would be the thought process there. And we're talking about pre-K students, 325 per location, based on, as I shared in the previous slide, 100 square feet per student. It's about a 65,000 square foot venture. That would be 65 would be then divided by 2 because it would be half and half. Again, looking at 295 square feet per, $295 per square foot plus the 20% in soft costs equates to about $25.4 million. And then the top range of that worst case scenario again would be 311 square feet, $311 per square feet, excuse me, to the tune of about $26.7 million. Escalating that out, we anticipate somewhere in the neighborhood of $32.4 to $33.6 million. Wanted to give you that background as you have further dialogue around the topic.
Is projecting that out to 2025 for option 2, is that relevant?
Say that again, Mr.
For option 2, projecting it out to 2025, is that time frame relevant?
Meaning, could we meet that time frame?
Could we do it sooner? Yeah.
I believe, and we could have Mr. Snipes come forward, but I believe as we shared on Friday, you're looking at about 24 months, 36 months in order to get something moving forward in terms of a building project.
I believe the sooner, the less expensive, because this is escalated out per year. So the sooner you design and build for any option, the less expensive,
Yeah.
in theory.
Yeah.
Having said that, we've got to recognize that prices are very high right now, and could they come down? Possibly. There's so many unknowns in this equation. These are just some potential numbers that could change. It could be a different price per square foot. It could be escalated at 3%, which is what we normally do, but the architect is saying right now it should be 6% escalation. So it could be anywhere between 3 and 6% escalation. So lots of variables, even in the numbers. Even in the 2 pre-K sites, we've said 650 students. That's taking, you know, again, a large number of students, 395 currently served in our schools, and adding 250 to allow for a little bit of growth. But the other students are added are the 231 identified in the ANLAR report that we are currently not serving, and that's how we got to 650. As you know and we know, our waiting list in WJCC has been about 100. So again, the ANLAR report said 231. So we don't, somewhere in the mix of that will be the number of students that we will end up serving. Lots of unknowns.
So are you finished with the presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Ms. Owenby?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for that additional information. And then just to clarify, with option 2, we wouldn't need land, but with option 1, there's also additional cost for land?
Potentially, depending on whether the land is available somewhere already and if there's a cost involved. We don't know.
And then this is a question, and I don't know if Mr. Snipes can answer this. I know that because building costs have gone up so quickly, I know that in the residential realm, some builders are not allowing people to lock in, if you will, until they get closer to the end of the construction, because the costs have fluctuated and builders don't want to lose money. So are similar kinds of things happening like in our industry? No.
We haven't heard that, but we have been advised to consider a 6% escalation, which might allow for that type of scenario to unfold.
Okay. All right, I have some additional just comments. So I do support the superintendent's recommended CIP, which is really lengthy, and there are a lot of just what I would consider housekeeping, so making sure, doing the great job of taking care of our existing buildings. I know one city council member at the joint meeting asked, you know, were some of our capital costs related to, you know, us not following a rigorous schedule of replacement and repair, and I think that it's clear that we do. So it seems like the only real issue of debate is with the pre-K and elementary space, and so we have the option 1 and the option 2 that was presented at the joint meeting on Friday. I support the superintendent's recommendation for option 1. I think it's clear from the ANLAR report, which was requested by the funding partners, that building an elementary school with dedicated pre-K space is the most flexible. We can easily serve elementary or pre-K students within a building as those numbers ebb and flow. We have built the last 2 elementary schools, Matoka and Blayton, with that dedicated pre-K space in them. So it would only follow suit that we would do that again. City Council supported our educational leaders' recommendation to build a pre-K, elementary school with a dedicated pre-K space, and I agree with them. And Councilwoman Ramsey astutely pointed out, as we just spoke about now, when we say immediate need and immediately address this issue, that's 2.5 years down the road, whichever option we go with. So in the meantime, we will continue to grow, students continue to enroll, even weekly now, and so the need for additional trailers might need to continue. We have them at all of our elementary schools, more than one trailer at all of our elementary schools except for one. And then wanted to speak to Supervisor Hippel's comment at the joint meeting that we would never put a school in a parking lot. That is in fact where a lot of our trailers are. They are sitting on what were parking spaces. Some are in the back of the building, but many are actually in what used to be the parking lot. So after the completion of pre-K space, if we went with the pre-K space options separately and non-elementary school, we might then, in fact, find ourselves, 2.5 years later, maybe in 2 years, coming back with an elementary CIP request. And just wanted to make it clear too for folks in the community who might have been watching the joint meeting and maybe stepped away for a second, Supervisor Eisenhower's comment that if we built an elementary school now, it would sit empty and we couldn't fill it. It would languish for years because we don't have students. That's not correct. If we had an elementary school today, like magically appear tomorrow with today's cost rates, we could fill it with our existing staff and students and could have lower class sizes, which would be ideal, which is something that we could in fact do with additional elementary school and pre-K space. So building the 2 pre-K buildings are like building 2 small elementary schools that would serve currently 325 pre-K students, the 100 that are on the waiting list, and maybe those 235 that were identified by the ANLAW report, but we don't have the staff currently to serve those 231 that might be out there that we haven't met yet. And so my concern is that that ongoing operational cost to serve those 231 students, will our funding partners commit to the operating cost to serve those additional 231 students, because we don't have the staff right now to serve those students. So to build a new elementary school, we would only be required to hire a vice principal, an assistant principal, and a principal, and maybe some administrative staff, but it would cost less administratively to open an elementary school with dedicated pre-K space. And this gives me pause because our history is with Blair. We needed a middle school, an entire middle school, and then it came down to cost 8 years later, and much back and forth. We ended up with half a school. And that negatively impacts our students directly. One of the things that was value engineered or costed out with Blair was a separate auditorium and cafeteria and gymnasium, so we have an auditoria. So what that means for our students is when the bleachers in the gymnasium are open fully, you can't play a basketball game because they open up into the basketball space. Our band and choral and orchestra students can't perform in the auditoria because the acoustics are so horrible. So tonight, Blair's band is performing at Lafayette. So we have band students and middle school Blair students who can't use all of their space. And my concern is if we are penny wise and pound foolish, we'll find ourselves in a similar situation. And I think to meet our long-term needs, an elementary school with that dedicated pre-K space is what we need. I'm winding down here. This is my final hurrah here. I'm struggling with the Board of Supervisors right now. I feel that they are telling us who to serve, how to serve them, and where to serve them. And I'm struggling with the idea of a partnership when I feel like our educational leaders have made it clear what's best for our students and where to serve our students. Questioning our data, not just now, but historically. It took 8 painful years to get Blair Middle School built, and I guess we're in for another 8 painful years for this elementary school. We're 3 years in now. And so in 2018, we talked about $28 million in land to build an elementary school, and now we're at upwards of $50 million. So for every year that we drag on, the cost just goes up. We provide our funding partners a 10-year CIP to ensure that there are no surprises. The school division started doing this in response to the Blair experience. But I feel like history continues to repeat itself. We take our fiduciary responsibility very seriously. After receiving 0 in our CIP last year, which was a pandemic, but even York County received, I think, $1 million placeholder. But after receiving 0, we knuckled down and saved upwards of $9 million, halted projects, and then gave back upwards of $7 million to the county and asked them to earmark that for future CIP projects. And I think that does demonstrate partnership. So at the end of the day, as Supervisor Hippel said, the Board of Supervisors and obviously City Council support our schools, but they think the tax rate is where it needs to be. After the joint meeting, I had a mother, a Jamestown mom, email me and suggest that she would gladly pay additional pennies on the dollar to ensure that we had lower class sizes in pre-K in every building. I'm concerned that the Board of Supervisors has heard from the same citizen over and over that we don't need elementary space. And I'm not sure they've heard from citizens who think that we do need the elementary space. Has the community had the chance to weigh in on the new elementary school to the tune of $40 million? We might be able to alleviate our space needs for upwards of 15 years. Or does the community need an $80 million new county complex? I don't know if that conversation has taken place in the community. City Council has recognized the need to raise taxes, pennies on the dollar, and has recognized the investment in schools is well worth it, because at the end of the day, WJCC is only as good as our schools are. People move here for our schools. We are the fastest growing community in our region. So to suggest that we would have a school with no children in it just boggles my mind. Good schools, and based on our portrait of a graduate, we are good schools. Good schools are directly related to our personal property values. I don't understand the reticence to fully funding our schools when it comes to operations or the CIP. And so we'll just end with some aspirational, since I'm walking off this board, some aspirational information here. You know, what would happen if we could have a pool? We have champion level swimmers in our division, award-winning swimmers who have to share community space because we do not have a pool for our swimmers. What about our lacrosse students who are also our state champions, but because of funding, we're not able to field a VHSL team? What if we actually had all the resources to mitigate the achievement gap, although we were doing a great job with the resources that we have? But I just wonder if we asked our parents and our teachers and our students, do you think we need an elementary school that has pre-K space so we could lower class sizes to get them back to where they were before 2008 when we increased them? And we're still not back to where they were when we increased them in the face of economic decline. What would you choose? So, putting that out there for the community as I step off this board to ponder, what would you choose?
Ms. Hummel.
I have nothing to say. I yield my time to someone else. I appreciate my fellow board member in her passion and what is a very impactful swan song. So,
Julie, could you get close to the microphone, please?
oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm done.
Ms. Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a matter of process, I think from my perspective, what I'm hoping to gain from this conversation is the ability to, later in this meeting, have a motion to adopt the CIP that we all understand and then can, vote on whether we agree on it or not. From my perspective, I'd just like to talk about what I can support and what I can't. So first of all, I do want to thank our funding localities for their amazing support for the quality of our buildings. They never fail to maintain our buildings well, and I think especially when we go to other divisions and we see buildings that are not as well maintained, even close by, our neighbors even, it's just remarkable to me how committed our funders are to the quality of our buildings, and I'm forever grateful for that. I agree with Ms. Ownby that we need an elementary school. I think that's the most effective use of our dollars, and I think it's the most flexible and effective use of educational space. And this board has agreed to that over the last several years because that's what we've asked for. And so from, as a practical matter, I'm, willing tonight to abandon that request in favor of asking for dedicated pre-K space, but I worry about the history books, right? And I want it to be clear that our educational leaders asked for an elementary school. This board asked for an elementary school, and only when it was made very clear to us that it would not be paid for did we pivot. So I want to say that publicly, and I hope that that's reflected in the history books, that it was just pivoted. We pivoted as a matter of practicality, not as a matter of what we think is best for the children in our division. I do appreciate the productive and clear conversation that we had at the joint meeting. I thought it was one of the most productive joint meetings that we've had in a long, long time. Even though I didn't necessarily agree with what was shared, I really did appreciate the frankness and the clarity with which everyone shared their position. So I thought it was a very good meeting. So I am willing to support asking to build dedicated space for pre-K, in which we pull out all of our pre-K kids from elementary schools, and then repurpose those rooms for elementary space, even the ones that were designed for pre-K. I can support that tonight in building dedicated pre-K space. I can support doing that on existing campuses. I'm a little reluctant to say 2. It might be 3. It might be, so I'm a little reluctant to just call out the 2 pre-K spaces. I'd rather just say dedicated pre-K space on existing campuses. I think that's still clear, still within the realm of what the supervisors said that they wanted, but it allows us to do some design work and have some flexibility there. And then in terms of the number of kids, I'm comfortable with the, $33.6 million or whatever number. I know that has some escalation built in. But in a range of 400 to 650 kids, I'm not yet comfortable to say we should build space for 650 preschoolers. I think we need to discuss that a little bit more as part of the design work. I need to learn a little bit more about who those kids are, whether we have staff, whether those operational dollars would be coming to us from our funders, because that's all locally funded at this point. I know that some money might be coming, but if we have to find money from our existing budget to fund that, that gives me pause. So I would rather, just kind of stop at short of saying how many students, or maybe a range of 400 to 650 kids, but I'm not yet ready to commit to 650 kids. That feels like a lot to me, and I need to learn more about that before I would vote for that. So, and one of the things that gives me pause about this idea is if we do build on 2, let's say, and it is 325 per location, as Dr. Herron has kind of pointed out, that puts whatever 2 places, those elementary school campuses will be as big or bigger than some of our middle schools. And the VDOE is very clear that we should count pre-K as part of our census. And, I was joking with Mr. Kelly the other day that some of these elementary schools could field football teams. They're that big. So, and I just, that gives me pause. I'm not sure we should have at the elementary school level so many kids on one campus. But that said, today I would be willing to support dedicated pre-K space on an existing campus. One request that I'd have, and then I hope that this board can agree on, and perhaps if they do, Mr. Kelly, you could include that in your transmittal letter. I do think we should ask the funding body, well, it would have to just be the county because the city already has it funded. I think we should ask the county to alter their CIP currently, the one that currently exists, so that we can go into design immediately and free up those dollars with the monies that we just handed back over, so we can get started on this sooner, given Mr. Snipes' comment that it does take a long time. I also think that even though it appears we might not need an elementary school for some time, those Future Think numbers are based on a cohort survival methodology on a reduced census because of the pandemic. So I'm not sure how stable those numbers are, but if we're not going to ask for an elementary school in year 9 or 10, I would like it to be noted like the middle school space is on this CIP, so it's not forgotten. I also think, Mr. Dow, if you could work with next year with the county to go into closed session to discuss land. One of the barriers to our asking for for our elementary school the last couple of years is that our local governments don't bank land. And that's highly unusual. Most local governments in Virginia do bank land, and we don't have any land. And we're allowed to, by code, go into closed session to discuss such issues, and I think we should. I know Ms. Larson has mentioned that many times, and I think we just need to just do it. And I do think we need to do design immediately, and then do construction in fiscal year 24. So that's sort of what that's what I can support tonight. Hope that.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Dr. Beers?
Yeah, I just have a few comments briefly. First thing is, if there's going to be growth in the student population in the WJCC James City County schools, it's not going to come from the city. It's going to come from the county. And the other thing I would point out is the city would have to pay far less money if we built an elementary school than if we added on to existing buildings. The percentage that they pay is much higher if we build a building that's that is independent of any other school. They pay 10%. And if they have to if we add on to existing structure, I believe they have to pay more of that percentage-wise. Anyway, the other thing I would point out is I agree with the notion that we have to act quickly, and we have to act, and I believe we have to act quickly to create space for our preschool kids. What I did sense from that meeting on Friday is the word space came out of everybody's mouth. County, city, board members. The county knows we're going to need more space. I think what they're trying to figure out, and we're trying to figure out, is what's the best way it's not going to make everybody happy, but I really think that option 2 is appropriate, and I believe we will find more support from the county for that than building a separate elementary school.
Ms. Young?
Yes, thank you. I am for option 2, and the reasons, first of all, when we're talking about pre-K space, we are still talking about Bright Beginnings. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. It's the same thing. Bright Beginnings is pre-K.
Well, I mean, okay. I mean, in our school division, our pre-K program is Bright Beginnings, so I don't know why we keep referring to it as pre-K space when we're actually talking about Bright Beginnings space. Just something that's in my head. Secondly, the Board of Supervisors has removed the elementary school. They'll remove it again. And we are in dire need of space. One of the things that I have not been willing to support is the elementary school until the ANLAR's report came back. I don't think that was completely definitive at what was best, although the person who delivered the report did say that she thought it would be best if it was served in an elementary school. However, one of the things that we can look at as we're looking at these options here for Bright Beginnings space, one of the things that Ms. Cook talked about is, and I agree with, maybe we shouldn't define 2, because we might end up deciding that we need 3. And maybe that should be left to further discussion with the Board of Supervisors. I want to continue our partnership with the Board of Supervisors. I think they've been very supportive of us as a school division. And we have worked through liaison to be a lot more transparent with each other, to talk about our needs. And also, for me, it's important that we also respect the fact that they're contending with other issues than school. So for me, that's part of this. And I'd also suggest that until we could get a lot more firmer costs, I'd like to leave some of those numbers off, because those are stunning. And I truly hope it's not going to cost $33.6 million to build pre-K space, because that's shocking, because the first figure I heard was $4.5 million per site, and that is nowhere near the same. And the other option, I guess, are we talking about brick and mortar space?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, building a building that will coexist with our current elementary schools, either 2 or 3. Is
it possible for us to look at modular? a modular system that we could put into place more quickly. I know that there is a program in Virginia that, for Virginia schools for modular space, which could be implemented a lot more quickly. I might be talking through my hat, but this is what I've heard.
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
I mean, a modular, I mean, at some of the schools in other counties, there is modular space where they've actually put up something rather quickly, where they come in with parts and they build the facility because it was already built, and they just re-put it up.
Right, we wouldn't be using current space. We would have to build brand new space, because by doing the 2 pre-K buildings, we would be taking all of those students out of the elementary schools, and new elementary school students will come into that space. So this will be brand new space that we'd want to last for a very long time.
Okay, well, I understand that, but I would like us to look at some other options than brick and mortar, because I think there are some other options out there. And I think the construction industry has become very good at providing some alternatives to just brick and mortar. I only say that because I've looked at some different options for myself, and some of them have been things that I had never considered.
I believe once we get into a design space for whatever it is, when we get working with architects and into design, then I'm sure they'll consider all options.
Okay, because I totally support option 2, and I'd like to see it done as quickly as possible. And so Dr. Beers and Ms. Cook have both stated that the sooner we could get this on the CIP, the better. And I concur with that.
Mr. Dowell, are you good? Are you done, Ms. Young?
I hope so, but
Okay, Mr. Dowell.
I might be back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. So this evening, I'm prepared to support an option 2, and I think that from what we heard from our funding partners at the county, anyways, last week, I think that I would agree with Ms. Cook and would like to see that we communicate with our funding partners to see if they'd be willing to support the design effort in an expedient fashion so that we can begin this process if our board here decides to modify Dr. Herron's recommended CIP to rededicate a bright beginning space on existing properties, campuses. There's been a lot said here tonight already on this topic. I think that for me, in our meeting recently with our funding partners, every single person in the room agreed on one point, and that's the fact that we need to free up space in our schools for all of our students, the bright beginnings, pre-K, K through 5. Now is the time to do that job. And so what we do, how we get there, and how we free up that space, that was the point of contention between city and county. I don't want to see anyone kick this down the curb, kick it down the hall, kick that can down the hall is what I'm trying to say, for us any longer. Because who suffers? Our children suffer. Every single one of them do. And so for that reason, I'm willing and I'm grateful that Dr. Herron and her staff were willing to go back to the drawing board and see how we can get something done. And I think this is that thing that we can all should support.
Ms. Cook?
I'll wait till the end.
Ms. Hummel?
I wanted to actually say what my choice was because I didn't actually say that after Ms. Ownby. So I've been thinking about it. I'm just trying to be practical here. It's obvious that from our liaison meeting that, or the joint meeting, that there's not going to be an elementary school anywhere in the next 10 years. So I think the practical thing would be to support option 2, because I also agree that right now, as we had mentioned, we've got really severe overcrowding in a lot of our, doing small groups underneath stairwells and behind shower curtains and in closets. And so we need to just do something to take action on something to improve the overcrowdedness. And if that means going with what wouldn't be maybe the optimal, but maybe the practical approach, then we'll just go down that route and get some space for our kids. I totally agree with Ms. Cook as far as really looking at the kind of space and the actual numbers, because the ANLAR report is showing 600 students that may or may not really work with our real numbers once we get into it. So I just wanted to voice my opinion about the options. And then one of our speakers said something about the space at James River, the community space, and
That's not our space.
one of our commentators, one of our community people. And it's always been a curiosity to me, that space. It's always been, whenever I go to James River and I get my tour, it's totally black, nobody's using it, lights are out, nothing's going on in that building. And it's just a very curious amount of space that doesn't seem to be utilized. And that's not the school's space. I don't know what, so anyway, I just want to throw that out there to the county. Is there anything that we can do with that James River affiliated space there for our own students? So.
Ms. Owenby.
Just one last comment. It would give me pause to build permanent space for our most vulnerable students, our students with disabilities and our economically disadvantaged students who are at risk of disability because of their social situation that's subpar or different. So if we're going to have bricks and mortar buildings for our typically developing K-12 kids, I would expect that this new pre-K space will be the same and not something subpar, different, or cheaper for our most vulnerable students.
Anybody else? So, couple of comments. So, as a 31-year tax-paying resident of the county who's also a voter there, and who's also used the 10% number a little bit, I think we also have to understand too that if your revenue is $1,000 and you pay $100, and your revenue is $1 million and you pay $100,000, it's equally painful. Although I could say that maybe the $100,000 is not as equally painful. So I have full respect for the city and their position and their quote unquote 10%. So I think we have to be kind of careful about that because it's a relative thing. So as the school board, the General Assembly has told us that we have to put out a budget of need and what we need, irrespective of the funding partners, although we still have to be respectful of that. And so for a few years, we've been putting an elementary school in our budget. And our current paradigm is that we have elementary schools with bright beginning space inside of them, and that's just the way we've moved forward. So we put that in our budget. I think for a couple of years, the county kicked it to the right, and last year they removed the elementary school altogether. So as a school board and our budget of need, we need pre-K through 5 space. We need elementary space. If the funding partners are not going to fund an elementary school, we need to fund pre-K space. I was intrigued by the numbers from the elementary capacities that if we repurpose those current pre-K classrooms in our elementary schools, consolidate that into, we'll say right now it's 2 buildings. It could be more. But if we consolidate into 2 buildings and we open up space, that kind of meets our elementary school needs through our planning period if things change. I am kind of with Mrs. Cook as far as our future think projections and think that might change in a little bit in the next few years going forward, but buying this pre-K space, repurposing our elementary schools gets us down the road where we can make a decision about that going forward. Like Mrs. Cook, I would like to see our elementary school either be in years 9 and 10 or have the same note that we have for James Blair, where we're going to just keep that on the docket. That's our paradigm when we get to middle school space, is that we're going to complete the construction of James Blair and move our administration out into a standalone facility or somewhere else. We'll figure out where that is. But right now we need pre-K space. I mean, we need elementary school space. Our elementary schools are packed. If we start going into construction, that kind of puts us in the range of, so 22, we do design through 22, we do construction through 23. So somewhere in 24, maybe we're doing redistricting and bringing in pre-Ks, consolidating pre-Ks into a building and renovating elementary schools and repurposing our elementary schools. It's obvious also when you look at our current demographics that redistricting is going to be from north to south. Kids are going to be moving from Stonehouse and coming south, and Domino moves going through there. So that'll be fun for whoever's still here to do that. But I think right now it's incumbent upon us to put pre-K space. A lot of these decisions, things we're talking about now, can be made. Those decisions can be made during the design process. As far as what the facility looks like. From my day job, the numbers don't shock me as far as how much it costs to build a building. That's about how much it costs to build a building. That is what it is. So if we look at the pre-K space on the option 2, the Board of Supervisors, while they have a 5-year plan, they really only fund option year 1. So do we know what engineering looks like for option 2, and then how much we would put into construction for the following year for that? We have a feel for how much we're going to ask for?
Mr. Snipes may be able to help us. It's kind of, we haven't got to that level of detail, not knowing which direction we're going.
Sure.
But I'm guessing the pre-K space, if we were to put it in 2 different places or 3 different places, we may duplicate the design, so you're not designing 3 things depending on the land that you actually have. Mr. Snipes.
Good evening, Board Chair, School Board members, Dr. Herron. Dr. Herron is correct. It's possible to duplicate the design, but based on where you place it, it may not be. So design is usually 5 to 10% of your construction cost. We've been averaging somewhere around 7 or 8%. So that's what you'd be looking at, is about, I would say, an average of about 8% of your construction cost.
So later in this meeting, we're going to vote for a CIP. What number am I voting on?
I would recommend that you look at the highest potential number with escalation, knowing that it may I'd rather come in below a number than above it.
8% of the 33, was it? For design?
Mr. Snipes, Mr. Keeper, that they were looking at 33.6 in total, and then 10% of that for design, potentially.
Right, and I will point out that right now, sitting in the CIP as proposed is 3.1 million for the design of the pre-K 5 space. That
might work.
That's pretty close.
So if we're looking at the pre-K space option 2, and we're looking at 32 to 33.6, so we'll call that 30. We'll call that 33 because it's a nice round number, although I think it might be prime. So that would be 3.3 million for engineering next year, and then 30 million for construction the year after?
So, yeah, but I think we want to move the engineering up to immediate. To ask them to, I mean, put it in FY ·23, but ask them to
Sure.
amend their CIP, yeah.
Sure, yeah, right. Although I could probably tell you that by the time they get around to that, you can't spend it in this year's CIP, so they could give it to us in this year and next year, but I don't know if we do that, but I do that in my day
It
job.
would be a very fast-tracked design process, even if we were to be given permission immediately. It usually takes several months to go through the design process, Mr.
Yeah,
Snipes.
it takes, of course, after it's approved, it takes about a year for design, but usually in an RFP for design, it's going to take us at least 3 to 4 months to put it out on the street, get it back, have a committee vote on it, and then come to a price with the actual firm.
So, but I think that it's, rather than starting that process July 1, if we can get a few weeks ahead of that, I think that's better, particularly because I think there's a lot of question around whether it's 400 or 650 kids. Right, and so I think there's a lot of question that has to, be answered about that. And so that is what's driving my desire to start that conversation early.
Yeah, we can have that conversation, but for the purpose of the CIP today, we do 3.3 million for the next fiscal year, and then we do 30 million for the following?
You said 33.
Well, 33 does 33 include design, or does that not include design? Does not include design.
Construction cost.
It's 10% of the, we can do some math there, but, okay.
3.3 and 33.
And granted, we'll have a better number next year if we do some design, although the design work won't be done by this time next year, but something to think about. So we would look at 3.3 million in design for next fiscal year, and then 33 million for construction of pre-K space.
Yes, sir.
Are we saying 2?
No, we're saying pre-K space.
Pre-K space.
That is, I'm throwing that out for discussion. So we would say pre-K space for 3.3 million for next year, which I guess is fiscal year '23, and construction for fiscal year '24.
It would be important to indicate to our funding partners that while it says for pre-K space, that we're actually intend to design for at least 2 buildings.
That can be our going-in plan. Yeah, I mean, that can be part of the letter that when we forward it.
In the analysis of where this could actually be located or co-located with a school, there are currently only 2 schools that we feel would work, but we will go back again when we look at the size and the numbers to see is there another appropriate point in the county and connected to the city where students could travel from if we were to add a 3rd space. So we'll look at everything again now that we are moving towards actually having a number and a plan to work with.
Okay. Thoughts from board members on that? Lisa?
No.
Okay. Greg? Jim? Sandy?
Well, I just have a question. I mean, are these numbers really firm? I don't think they are they?
Firm.
I mean,
But nothing's firm until you go to contract.
right, and I understand that, but.
So from a budgetary perspective, I believe, from my perspective, that if you put 3.3 million out there as a budget for engineering.
For design and all that, okay.
Then you're close. And if you don't spend it, say you don't spend 300,000 of it, that goes into our carryover, and then they fund us for 32.7 the next year for construction. So that would just carry over into that. So is that a thumbs up there?
Yes.
So we will take the superintendent's proposed CIP and make those mods for how we're going to go forward. The last thing we want to talk about is the elementary school. So they plan for 5, we plan for 10. They fund for 1, then we kind of have budgetary numbers for the next year, but every year is a new year. Do we want to put an elementary school with notional numbers in years 9 and 10? Or do we want to put a note that says, hey, we think we need an elementary school?
Put it in 9 and 10. Put it in 9.
Well, so 9 would be engineering, 10 would be construction. Okay, Kira?
I prefer the 9 and 10, but the information that was shared tonight, I could go with a note as well, so.
Dr. Beers?
Yeah, I would support that.
Put it in 9 and 10. Ms. Young?
Yes.
Greg?
I think there's enough distance there for us to know exactly what we're going to need.
Right, and it's
By the time we get
it's a
there, yeah.
notional plan,
Right,
and then
yeah.
as you move forward,
Yeah.
you adjust to the plan.
Exactly.
So great, what numbers do we want to put?
100 million.
We can do an escalation out to 10
Yeah,
years, but it's
52
going to be.
times 6% times 6% times 6%.
Take that calendar,
Yeah.
take that calculator out there, Kira. Well, I would not, if I'm going out 10 years, I would not escalate at 6% a year. Because then you're going to be building a $100 million elementary school.
Who knows?
That's exactly right.
I think 3% would be appropriate because it's a number that we'll revisit. And that's what we normally use on all of our projects in the CIP. And I don't know if Ms. Ewing has her calculator working.
What's that?
Well, I think part of the challenge, though, as we're going through this, is that these numbers are predicated on 850 students with pre-K mixed in, and what you're talking about in the initial part of the CIP conversation and modification would be dedicated space for pre-K. So I think you might want to look at a potentially smaller number.
This is just elementary at a different cost per square foot. So if we take what we originally had in the CIP for elementary space, which was about 32, 31 point something, and escalate that 3% out, we might not be too far away.
Okay.
As a number, because that was based on analysis of current bills within the area when Mr. Snipes brought that number across, correct, Mr. Snipes? So the original elementary number, which is in the budget, in the CIP, we could escalate that 3% out 10 years, and at least it's a number we can revisit in the next CIP discussion.
So I'd just like a little bit more understanding of the number I'd be voting for. Does that make sense? So what did I have, what did we have for engineering? $3,169,000 at 3%. I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't know. This is why I don't make sausage in public.
But yeah, they can come up with the numbers while we go through the rest of it.
Perhaps the good news is that we've got a few moments to work through some action items while Mr. Keever, Mr. Snipes maybe can pull some numbers together for you, if that would work, Mr. Chair.
So you want me to go slowly through the action items so that we can come through that?
That would be delightful. Thank you, sir. This is your last meeting, so slow is good.
Well, yeah, I was going to make a comment at the end, but I'm happy to talk a little bit about, just to add some clarity around the contract. So the contract with the city and the county regarding operations for the school division is actually just for that, it's operations. And so the city, for the privilege of being a partner in this excellent school division, pays, I think it's a 16 or 17% premium. So every dollar the county puts in per student, the city puts in 16, 17% premium. And for new construction, that used to be outlined in the contract, but has for many years been pulled out, the last 2 or 3 contracts, I believe, and it's negotiated per project. So by way of example, when James Blair was built, the city kicked in $2 million more than its sort of 10% baseline. In addition, just it's of note that schools don't generate tax revenue, right? So in addition to paying $2 million more, the city actually having the school in its jurisdiction is foregoing those tax dollars. So I just wanted to clarify the contract and how that works, so.
Okay. I think the numbers.
I'd like to comment on that.
Go
I
ahead,
spoke
Dr.
to several city council members, and maybe the 10% may not be correct, but they realized that they would have to spend more money for a brand-new standalone elementary school. I'm sorry, less, just the opposite, less money in terms of the percentage of their costs than adding on to an existing building. Now, they may be right, they might be wrong. That was a conversation I had, so it might be useful to take a look at that contract, because I don't think I've actually seen the full contract in quite a while to see what that actually says.
We're a victim of the contract. They don't ask for us for our terms.
Hmm?
We're a victim of that contract. They don't ask us for our input on that. So that's between the city and the county.
Right. Yeah, I know, but it would be nice to know for information what that contract actually says. That's all.
So should we move ahead? I got 2 action items before I get to the CIP, so I can give them a little discussion, a little time on that. I think it's going to be 3.6 and 37.7, but they can figure that out. Can I get a motion for approval of the minutes from the 11/16/21 meeting?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve minutes from the November 16th, 2021 meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Dowell. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Owenby. Is there any discussion? Ms. Dollar?
Mr. Dowell.
Aye.
Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Ms. Owenby.
Aye.
Mrs. Young.
Aye.
Dr. Beers.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye. Motion carries. 9.02, approval of personnel actions. Can I get a motion for approval of the personnel actions as presented this evening?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the personnel actions tonight.
As presented this evening. Thank you, Ms.
As
Hummel.
presented this evening, sir.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Dowell. Any discussion? Ms. Aller?
Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Ms. Owenby.
Aye.
Mrs. Young.
Aye.
Dr. Beers.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. Dowell.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye. Thank you. 9.03, approval of the fiscal year 23-32 superintendent's proposed capital improvement plan. Mr. Keever, do you have some recommendations for us? Or Ms. Ewing?
Ms. Ewing?
Confirm for the pre-K to 5 space, we're doing 3.3 million for design
Yep.
in 23, and then 33 million for construction in 24.
And we're escalating that 3% to put it out to 31 and 32.
So we took the current cost that's in there for pre-K to 5 space and escalated it out, and came up with 41 million for construction to put in 32, and 10% of that, 4.1 million for A&E in fiscal year 31. So adding those numbers to the existing CIP, the grand total over the 10 years is 212,913,000.
What was the design number, I'm sorry, in 2031?
4.1 million.
4.1.
4.1, yes, sir.
And 44 million for construction.
41 million.
41 million. Got you.
Backing up to what she started with, I think she meant to say pre-K space at the beginning, right?
The beginning, yes, the
Right.
pre-K space.
Okay.
Yes.
Right, so our pre-K space for fiscal year 23 is we have 3.3 million for design and 33 million in fiscal year 24 for construction.
Yes.
And then we're going to modify the plan to have 4.1 million in 31.
Yes.
41 million in 32.
Yes.
And
For K-5, for elementary school.
For elementary.
For elementary
For
school.
elementary.
Yes, so
Right.
it will
K
no
through
longer
5.
say pre-K-5.
No longer say pre-K, it'll say elementary.
K-5,
K through
elementary
5.
school.
Dr. Herron, was that?
That's correct. I think we put elementary school in, then it's very clear.
Right, elementary school. Does everybody understand that? Can I get a motion for someone to put that into words?
I will do my best. Mr. Chair, I move that we amend the superintendent's recommended CIP to reflect a design cost for a dedicated Bright Beginning space on existing campus of $3.3 million in 2023, and a construction cost for the same purpose in 2024 of $33 million. And that we also request for a kindergarten through 5 elementary school to be designed in 2031 at $4.1 million and constructed in 2032 at $41 million.
Excellent. Is that pre-K space or is that Bright Beginning space we want to say?
In 2031?
23.
Oh, 23.
I think it may be better to say pre-K because it's beyond the current Bright Beginnings program right now, although those students will be brought into the Bright Beginnings program. I think either will work. But I think everyone understands pre-K in our discussions from last Friday.
I'm fine with pre-K.
Is that that friendly amendment? Okay. Okay, so it has been moved to accept the superintendent's proposed CIP with the amendment to change pre-K space from fiscal year 23 to $3.3 million for design and fiscal year 24 for $33 million, and to add an elementary school in fiscal year 31 for $4.1 million in design and in fiscal year 32 for $41 million in construction. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Owenby. Is there any discussion?
And we are going to ask for them to accelerate the design. Release those funds to us early.
Okay, so we're going to ask to accelerate the design funding and talk about at least two buildings for pre-K space. This is all in the letter, so it's not part of the motion. And then add the elementary school for fiscal year 31. Everybody good? Everybody good?
Yes, sir.
All right, Ms. Zoller.
Mr. Dowell.
Aye.
Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Ms. Owenby.
Aye.
Mrs. Young.
Aye.
Dr. Beers.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye. Thank you. 9.04, approval of Program of Studies 2022-2023. Can I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the program of studies for 2022 and 2023.
Thank you, Ms. Owenby. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Is there any discussion? Ms. Aller?
Ms. Owenby.
Aye.
Mrs. Young.
Aye.
Dr. Beers.
Aye.
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. Dowell.
Aye.
Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye, thank you. 9.05, approval of the purchase of 13 school buses from Sunny Merriman Incorporated. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the purchase of 13 school buses from Sunny Merriman Incorporated for the total cost of $1,515,184.
Thank you, Mrs. Cook. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Owenby. Any discussion? Ms. Young?
No, I just don't think you can hear me.
Okay, I saw hand motions there.
She tried to second it.
Oh, sorry. My apologies. Ms. Aller?
Ms. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. Dowell.
Aye.
Ms. Hummel.
Aye.
Ms. Owenby.
Aye.
Mrs. Young.
Aye.
Dr. Beers.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye, thank you. 10.01, upcoming events. December 10th on Friday at 9 o'clock in the morning, we are going to have a new board member orientation. Room 300 in the annex of the school board.
Swearing in before
Well, ho, 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 ho. Merry Christmas. And before that, at 8 o'clock, will be the swearing in at the county courthouse in the jury room. If I do, I'll hit you in the head with it.
I'm counting on it.
On December 16th at 8:30, Policy Committee meets both virtually and in room 300 at the annex in the school board. One last New Horizons meeting next Tuesday for me. Upcoming meetings, January 4th at 4 o'clock in room 300 is the budget work session. January 4th at 6 o'clock is closed session in room 300 in the annex, followed at 6:30 by the work session and action items, also in room 300. Next meeting is January 18th. After that at 4 o'clock, followed by a closed session. Budget work session at 4 o'clock on January 18th. Location to be determined. Closed session January 18th at 6 o'clock, followed by a regular meeting on January 18th at 6:30. Location to be decided. I don't know that we put anything for an action item for next meeting, but I'm sure you'll find something to talk about. Probably organizational meeting, for instance. Board member comments. Dr. Beers?
First of all, I'd like to say that, well, I know we spend an awful lot of time talking about the pros and cons of the construction of an elementary school, or talking about that option too. And I think it's important to recognize how deliberate the board has been. We don't always agree on what direction that we want to go in there, but I think we uncovered just about everything that was possibly to uncover in order to make a decision. And I very much respect my other fellow board members during this, and I think difficult discussion that we had. I'd like to very much praise our high schools. I'd like to praise all the schools, but particularly hearing about how those three high schools and their staff and their teachers helped their students progress during this past year was nothing short of remarkable. And I know for a fact that many of those, all those teachers look forward to that 2-week break that they're going to have coming up in the not too distant future. The only other thing I would say is that I have very much appreciated the opportunity to work with Mrs. Ownby and also Mr. Kelly. And as we both know, as the three of us know, we've tended to agree on more things that we disagreed, and I respect your efforts and your time on the board as well. And since we're not going to have another meeting before the end of the year, correct?
Correct.
I like to wish everybody a safe and enjoyable holiday. Our students, our staff, students, and the teachers, and really take the opportunity to catch your breath and be ready to go again in January. That's all. Thank you.
Dr. Beers, Ms. Young?
Yes. Okay, I hope you can hear me now.
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that during the presentation tonight of the high schools mentioned summer school graduation. And going back to the presentation of Dr. Worley about how the high school staff works to meet the needs of our students. I always think of summer school graduation in light of that, because I haven't missed one since I've been on the board that I can recall. I'm always impressed with how excited. I mean, it can be 2 students, it can be 3 students. Last year it was 4, but they're always so excited. Their families are just as excited as you see on graduation day, because these students met those goals. But it's only with the hard work of our teachers, and I just want to congratulate them for that, because I know we'll have students this year that will be in that position also. well, we're coming to the end of the year, and we're looking forward to a nice long break for our staff. And I want to wish them a welcome rest. It's been a long time coming, and I wish you happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas. It's too early for Chinese holidays, so I won't get into that. But please take some time to rejuvenate yourself, to rest. Try not to think about school. It will be there beginning of January, I promise. So just get some rest. And for our two departing board members, will be a new board in January. Tonight, Ms. Ownby said it was bittersweet. Well, it is bittersweet, but I wish the two of you, I won't say happy trails, but maybe that might be the best way. And appreciate your input and your leadership, and you will be missed, I'm sure.
Thank you, Mrs. Young. Ms. Hummel?
I would like to just add to what my colleague said about appreciation for the presentation tonight, for the portrait of a graduate and all the effort that goes into our teachers and administration and the students themselves. So just wanted to throw that out, and also, again, repeat what my colleagues have said about just wishing our teachers, our staff, and all of our parents and students a welcome break coming soon. So Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah for all of those, everyone. I get kind of emotional when because you guys have been with me for my entire time. You a little bit less than him, but it's just been a great honor and pleasure and privilege to work with you two. You are both passionate, the behind the scenes stuff that nobody else sees, the constant attention to communicating with community members, with the things like the transmittal letter that you're going to have to do. The role of chair, and both of you have been chair, was one that I knew how much work it was going to be. And I was vice chair looking at the work that Lisa had to do when she was chair. And I was like, no, thank you. It is huge amount of work and effort. And I just want to say thank you both so much for everything that you've done for our school system, for your dedication. And I will sorely, sorely miss you, and your calculating abilities, and your engineering like jokes, and then you with all your passion with special ed and for the most vulnerable in our community. So anyway, just thank you, and I'm going to miss you guys both.
Thank you, Jules. Ms. Cook?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. They say you can't cry when you're drinking, so. Water. I wanted to thank, I was delighted to see the Pledge of Allegiance back tonight, so I just wanted to say that. And I also wanted to thank the Rotary Club for their dictionaries. I remember when my kids got theirs, and they're really cool. Ms. Ownby, you brought up lacrosse today, and that reminded me, Virginia Beach has now allowed that into their, it's a sanctioned sport, so I one day hope we can get there as well. I wanted to mention that we all enjoyed the VSBA conference together and learned a lot, so that was a good thing. And then also, now that we've adopted this CIP, I think we need to activate our networks and advocate for it. I think we've gotten a pretty clear indication from our funding partners that they support this, but I think they do need to hear from citizens that they too support it, because I think it's more often than that they hear from people who don't. And so, now that it's been adopted, it's really our job to do that. So I hope that together in the new year we can work to share the news with our citizens and ask that they talk to City Council and to the Board of Supervisors to share their thoughts, hopefully in support, but just to share their thoughts. And then lastly, I did want to just just say it was an honor to serve with you, Lisa, and you, Jim. You're both tremendously big picture thinkers. And that is a critically important role on this board. Lisa, your passion for children and public education is strong and unwavering and contagious. You've taught me so much, particularly about the importance of educating every kid. You taught me so much about special education, and your service as 2 years as chair, especially during the pandemic, and serving with you and the leadership team was really incredible, so thank you. Jim, I just want to talk a little bit about your legacy, because I think you have kept this organization strong. Prior to your arrival here, we had 5 superintendents in 10 years. 5 superintendents in 10 years. Under your leadership, we've had 2 superintendents in 12. You are steady. Your steady leadership has contributed to the stability of this organization, and sometimes through really tough things, multiple redistrictings and a recession and a pandemic and draconian budget cuts. So I just want to celebrate your steady hand and big picture approach, because it has had an impactful, you've left an impactful legacy here, and you've been a champion of teachers and of financial accountability and really well-considered facility requests. And I also want to thank your beautiful bride, who's here in the audience. And I think you deserve a hand for lending Jim to us. So, anyway, thank you both so much.
Mr. Dowell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I get into thank yous, I would ask, I want to say thank you, first of all, for the Portrait of a Graduate, and that was a great event last year, graduation under the blazing sun. I wonder if we could include, my own request, and perhaps it's out of bounds, but I wonder if we can include, as we look at Portrait of a Graduate, those that aren't necessarily going off to college. We focus on SAT, ACT, and we see how those two kind of, it could be kind of a redundant metric that we're looking at there, and it doesn't necessarily include those like at New Horizons, or those that are able to secure a job right out of high school. They've done the work, they've made all the effort, and they've secured that job that they wanted. So I think in my perspective, that also is a part of that Portrait of a Graduate, what we deem to do to build up our students to be successful beyond high school. Thank you to you both. A lot's been said. The legacy, it will be astounding as we look back, and we look back at all the work that we'll have to do to fill these big shoes. So thank you to you both.
Ms. Owenby?
Wow. It's been a pleasure to serve. And one of my favorite jobs as board member has been to be a cheerleader for our division, because it's very easy to be a cheerleader, because I think we have a lot of good news to share. And we have staff that are so dedicated and work so very hard. And so, I don't know if I can get through this. So I'll just focus on rolling up my sleeves, because there's more work to be done. So I'll focus on just a few comments here. I have served for 5 years, which is kind of unique. I served at the tail end of someone else's term, and then had an opportunity to immediately run and serve my own 4 years. And in that time, I humbly served as vice chair and chair, and also on policy, special education, career and technical education, student advisory, and liaison committees, and I learned so much. And just appreciate the opportunity to learn from staff and from my colleagues. One of the things that I did quickly learn as a new board member is that there are 7 of us, and we're not independent, right? We have to work together, and as Ms. Hummel said, this has been a great group to work with. But no one on this board is an educational expert at the doctoral level, and so we collectively hire a superintendent, and so I am so blessed that I got to be part of that process. And so I quickly learned that we need to stay in our lane and let our leader lead us. And so I know that that wisdom and that understanding will remain on this board. I believe that we are here, each of us, to help this division and to help every student achieve academically. And there's no other reason why you would serve on this board if that wasn't where your heart was. But I know there are lots of challenges, and I hate it that I have to leave because we still have teacher and staff salaries that are too low, and we need to address it, and we need to be bold, as Ms. Cook said, as we move into our operating budget. And I won't be part of that process, but maybe I can text people. But this is the year to be bold so we can make sure that we can retain our incredible staff. We have a bus driver shortage. We have lack of sufficient academic space, as we've talked about, and we are an outlier in that regard compared to our neighboring divisions. We have drastically changing demographics, and I've said that for so long, but I think even the Portrait of a Graduate pointed to that. Our special education numbers are increasing, our economically disadvantaged students are increasing, our L students are increasing, and there's an impact to that. And that's directly related to space as well. We have teacher and staff burnout and responding to this 2-year pandemic that doesn't seem like it's leaving anytime soon. And then I'm leaving before we have created a policy for inclusion of students with disabilities. So there's still more work to be done on a policy committee. But, you know, responding to this pandemic has been unprecedented, and I just need to reiterate that for the community. In addition to educating our students, which is our primary goal, we have not only asked, we've required our staff at all levels to function as health experts, create health protocols, perform contact tracing, serve in multiple capacities to address staffing shortages. So I feel compelled to remind the community and the incoming board that we educate all students. And someone said that tonight. I think Dr. Miani. We do educate all students, and in order to do that and support their academic achievement, this board must address and grapple with issues and policies like special education and LGBTQ issues, equity, poverty, preschool, student conduct, homelessness, student food insecurity, English language learners, and so much more. In order to address the 3 R's of old, we must tackle a whole host of issues that our students and our families face daily. And we don't have the luxury of cherry-picking students. We serve every single student that comes through our door. And our number one job is to ensure that every student feels safe, accepted, supported, challenged academically, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, religion, age, sexual orientation or identity, and ability or socioeconomic class. And I feel like this board has embraced that. We make sure that we support our students. And I just want to make sure that this board, as I leave, never lose sight of making sure that we're supporting our teachers always at all levels, because it's our teachers and our staff that are going to get us through this pandemic. With the pandemics, there's been some upsides. We have some integrated technology. We have virtual meetings, which some people hate and some people don't hate so much. But with that, we also have increased anxiety and learning loss, and so we'll continue to grapple with that for some time. I believe strongly that we must model appropriate behavior for our students. And so we must, as a group, and I think we demonstrate this, to be civil and have and respect decorum and treat each other well. And I think as a board, as mentioned tonight, we often have very different opinions, but we do what's right for the kids at the end of the day, and we do it well together. The community is only as good as our schools are. We must support the school division and recognize that we continue to be in unprecedented times. And it's only going to be through collaboration and partnerships that we are successfully able to address student academics. I'm going to miss serving on this board, working with such dedicated colleagues and staff. And while I'm just moving out of Powhatan, I'm still a WJCC parent, so I'm still Lafayette, so I'm not gone. But I'll miss you all.
Kira, I'm going to need more water. First things about tonight's meeting, I do appreciate the Portrait of the Graduate. I did appreciate those PowerPoint slides. They did not communicate exactly how hot it was, and I appreciate them not putting a picture of my sunburned head in it. It was hot. Mrs. Cook mentioned the VSBA conference, and I did enjoy that, and the presentation that Mr. Dowell and myself and Ms. Larson had with Dr. Herron and Mr. Stevens about collaboration between the Board of Supervisors and funding partners and school boards, which is kind of apropos to our whole discussion tonight. So that was kind of fun. Kel and I went to the I Love Holiday Movies theater presentation at Jamestown. It was really fun, very original, and we enjoyed it. It was very nice. I wrote some stuff here. We'll see if I get through it. So on, I think it was January 5th of 2010, I took my oath of office for the first time. My good friend Mike McGinty gave me the oath. We were in the lobby of the school board office, which at the time was Building D at the county complex. And Kel was there. My kids were there. Took the oath. All the board members were lined up. We all smiled. Congratulations, pictures. I mean, it was great, right? I'm on this high. I was appointed for the first time. I was appointed again, and I elected 4 times, but it's another story. We smiled, congratulations. There was, I was one of 8 people that was appointed, that were trying to seek the appointment. And so after all of that, we immediately went into a closed session for student discipline. We had a kid who had an expulsion hearing. The kid was there, emotional, nervous, scared. Mom was there. She was emotional and scared. And a new school board member who wondered what in the world he had just gotten himself into. It was the first time, but not the last time, I understood that school board service is about the kids. On that January day, I had 1 kid in high school, 1 kid in middle school, 1 kid in elementary school. Today, the 2 oldest have graduated. The youngest is starting her last semester in college, and I am so looking forward to writing my last tuition check. The kids who were in kindergarten that day are walking across the graduation stage in June. It's been long enough. So I've spent a lot of time reflecting back on the last 12 years and people I've come in contact with, the people I've worked with. The first who comes to mind is Marianne Maimoni. I took her seat. She always called me her little baby brother. She was a great mentor, a great friend, and I miss her a lot. And then I think about the board members who I first served with. Ruth Larson always holds a special place for me. Jim Nichols and his wife Janelle, Elisa Manuel, Oscar Prater, Heather Cordasco, Denise Cook. All of them taught me what it was like to serve on the board, what it was about, and how to be a good board member. As Mrs. Cook talked about, I was part of hiring 2 superintendents, 2 great superintendents. Dr. Constantino was the exact superintendent that school board was looking for. I enjoyed working with Steve. I enjoyed both he and his wife Peggy. I consider them friends to this day. Steve served this school system very well, and I am grateful, most importantly, for what he did in bringing Dr. Herron to our school system. I've worked with both Steve and Olin on difficult issues, but we've had a lot of great times and a lot of great laughs. And I think on behalf of this board, I can say, man, we made a great choice. I can't talk about the superintendent without talking about the board clerk. Janet Surza was great. Beth has been wonderful. I've enjoyed calling Beth and say, what do I owe you? What have I failed to do for you? We've had a lot of great laughs. Another great choice. And of course, Star, right? So what a great smile. I love Star. The administration that we have, the one testament that you have about a leader is who they bring to lead the next level. We have some great leaders here. Mr. Keever, Brian Landers, Stephanie, Kathy, Tim. As I start naming people, I'm going to leave somebody out. I apologize. There's two people I have to mention specifically. Renee, as a board, policy and budget, and having Renee in that finance position is so comforting to me. She does such a great job. So I appreciate that. And the second is someone who I have watched grow so much over the last 12 years. Where he was 12 years ago and where he is today, completely different guy, Marcellus. Thank you for letting me see that. Thank you for always being the best dressed. and most importantly, thank you for getting my clocks working at Blair. Good Lord. Building administrators, staff, teachers, maintenance folks, drivers, custodians, the job you do is just great. Thank you so much for that. I will miss serving on this board, but I'll miss the students. Classroom visits, plays, concerts, musicals, governor's school, football, basketball, soccer, volleyball, graduations, GED graduations, as Mrs. Young talked about. Those are just great. It's truly amazing. Our students, when I hear people say, oh, high school kids are just, all they can do is text. I'm like, when's the last time you talked to a high school student? Those guys are amazing. They do a great job. And it gives me great hope for the future of our country. I want to thank the citizens of James City County who supported me through my 2 appointments and my 4 elections and giving me the privilege to serve this community. I am grateful for the opportunity. We can all argue about how well I did it, but I did the best job I could. Now comes the hard part. Thanks to Kel, who has taught in this school system on her 31st year. She's taught here for 1 less week than we've been married. She got the job offer at our rehearsal dinner. Patrick, Dan, and Megan, for their patience as I prepared for meetings, returned to email, talked to people on the phone, innumerable number of meetings, conferences, obligations. Without their support, none of this would have been possible. Being on the board, you get lots of feedback, and they're the brunt of some of that too, and so I thank them for that. I've enjoyed working with everybody up here. I could go into detail, but I'd cry too much, so I'm not going to do that. I do have to mention one person. So my first couple of years here on the board, I was the youngster, and I was serving with 6 people who had been here for a long time, and the city was getting ready to appoint somebody, and I'm reading the bios, and I'm like, I remember talking to Ruth. I'm like, who is this Potter person who wants to be on the school board? Good Lord. Ruth set me straight, and little did I know that she would be one of the smartest and most passionate public education advocates I know. I'm not going to look at you. Service on the school board is important. It's not about a liberal or conservative agenda. It's not about who has the gavel or who sits where. It's not about the kids, your kid's school. It's not about your neighborhood. It's not about those who got you elected or say they got you elected, or those who say they're not going to get you reelected. School board service is about the kids. And that's it. It's been a privilege to serve on this school board, and I did the best I could. I wish you all the best as Sarah and Kim get ready to take these seats. The business of the school board continues. and it'll do just fine without Lisa and I. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm going to miss you all. Adjourn.